Chapter 3071. The extermination true body was the main culprit behind the destruction of the previous Yuan world. Now, someone else's will controlled this body and released a terrifying power. This was far beyond the pinnacle of the seventh step and could even be compared to frenzy. Shua, frenzy also attacked at the same time, waving a tentacle towards Ling Han. Ling Han punched out, facing the two supreme experts at the same time. Boom, his body trembled and he retreated 3,000 miles. Frenzy and extinction weren't much better off. One's tentacle was sent flying, while the other was sent flying. What was going on? The two peerless, ferocious creatures of the past and present had actually joined hands? Ling Han stood proudly in the sky, looking down at frenzy and extinction. Then he stared at extinction. Those seven were bewitched by you, weren't they? Miju was also standing in the air. Her clothes fluttered in the energy storm. She was a peerless beauty. So what if I am? So what if I'm not? She asked. Ling Han shook his head. I'm getting more and more confused. You actually want to protect frenzy? What, are you out of your minds? Miju looked at Ling Han and said disdainfully, summer insects cannot speak of ice. Ling Han laughed heartily. I can crush someone at 7 steps with just 6 steps. Do you think you are worthy of looking down on me? Where does your courage come from? Do you really think that you can stop me? I can match you now, and in a few billion years, I can suppress you with a single hand. Miju sneered. You're growing, but don't tell me I haven't. Indeed, Mia extermination's strength was similar to Ling Han's at that time. Now that Ling Han had made great progress, so had Mia extermination. Perhaps the speed at which extermination advanced could really catch up to Ling Han. Looks like you obtained a lot of secrets from me back then, Ling Han said. At the center of the previous Yuan world, he had been invaded by the world will. Although he had obtained the ability to derive planes, it seemed that many of his secrets had also been obtained by the other party. In theory, his foundation had been laid down when he was a quasi-Empyrean. Logically speaking, even if extermination knew all of his secrets, the other party would not be able to copy his path. However, annihilation had become incredibly powerful. Wait a minute, as long as he obtained the ability to derive dimensions, then even if there was only one, wouldn't he be able to slowly increase the number of dimensions and eventually reach the point where it would become an origin world? And why was extinction so terrifying? She shouldn't have an incarnation plane. So how could she crush 7 steps? Could it be that, like Ling Han, annihilation had also absorbed the power of countless existential planes when she was a quasi-celestial lord and developed the embryonic form of the origin world in her body? Maybe she hadn't been as exaggerated as Ling Han back then, maybe she only had 100 or 200 existential planes. Now that she had obtained the secret of deriving new existential planes from Ling Han, she had opened the door to become even more powerful. Unfortunately, there are still some secrets that I didn't get, Miju said with some regret. Otherwise, would you still be alive today? Ling Han understood why the will of the world had wanted him to join forces with annihilation, and had even said that only by joining forces could they kill madness. It was because it wanted Ling Han to tell those secrets that he could not obtain to annihilation. However, for the sake of the life code, annihilation had no choice but to compete with Ling Han. In the end, Ling Han had used clues to confirm that the will of the world was the present annihilation. Otherwise, Ling Han would not have been able to match annihilation before he had taken 5 steps. Even if he had taken 5 steps, it would have been useless. Even if he could travel through dimensions, it was very likely that annihilation would have seized the opportunity to kill him in one blow. After all, annihilation was much stronger than Chong Yen and the others. What does this have to do with madness? Ling Han asked. Why should I tell you? Annihilation said coldly. Shua, madness waved a tentacle over. Although it was also very confused as to why its previous incarnation would appear to help it, how could it not use a helper when it had one? I'll stop him. You do what you need to do. Annihilation said as she fought fiercely with Ling Han. Her power was really not weaker than Ling Han's. Not only was her strength outstanding, but she could also use the Celestial Lord symbol. This made it seem like she had become a second Ling Han, and she could completely fight them head-on. Now, the battle prowess of Stage 7 had been restrained, and there was no one left to stop Madness. Boom! Madness took the opportunity to counterattack, frantically attacking the city and plundering the land. In just one day, it had reclaimed all the land it had lost. Without the obstruction of Stage 7, it charged straight in, its pace of invasion constantly increasing. Ling Han left Annihilation behind and charged towards Madness, but Annihilation immediately chased after him. The two of them were evenly matched, and it was very difficult to shake off the other. Annihilation alone was enough to stop Ling Han, and vice versa. Ling Han could also stop Annihilation. Of course, the prerequisite was that Madness was strong enough. Otherwise, if it were Chong Yen and the others, they would have been sent flying by a single slap from Ling Han. Madness was indeed affected a little, but it was not enough to stop its frenzied advance. Ling Han, stop struggling. Let's welcome the arrival of a great era. Annihilation said. There was actually no point in them fighting like this. You can't hurt me and I can't hurt you. No one could do anything to the other. Thus, Annihilation clearly did not want to be entangled with Ling Han. Even if she wanted to kill Ling Han, now was not the time. Oof. Let Madness devour the entire origin world. That's your so-called great era. Ling Han said coldly. Have you forgotten what I told you? Annihilation said proudly. The eighth type of power is opposition. After the ultimate destruction, what will come is an even more vigorous vitality. What kind of new life can be exchanged for the destruction of the entire origin world? Ling Han said calmly. Soft-hearted, Annihilation said coldly. At our level, do we still need to care about those ants? Ling Han, we can work together and break through this small puddle. There's no need. Ling Han rejected. Then you can only be drowned by the torrent of the era. Annihilation said. She kept pestering Ling Han, not letting Ling Han have a chance to stop Madness. The Supremes were all fighting, but it was meaningless. There were no casualties, and no one was even bleeding. There was only Madness constantly advancing. Ling Han frowned. With Annihilation and the others holding him back, Madness could not be stopped. What to do? Go, he suddenly said, sending out a wave of divine sense. If this continued, the result would be that they could only watch helplessly as the origin world was swallowed up bit by the frenzy, and there was nothing they could do. But if they left now, at least Ling Han could still cultivate and become stronger. Moreover, if this continued, it would not be long before Madness devoured the Xuanma Plain. There were friends and relatives of Ling Han, Lin Luo, and the others there. Thus, the wisest thing to do at this time was to retreat. Lin Luo and the others were all at the seventh step. They were naturally decisive people who could rise and fall. With a thought, they made up their minds and gathered around Ling Han. End of chapter. Chapter 3073. Chong Yen and the other four came from the previous Yuan world. After the collapse of a world, they slept for so many years. Their way of thinking has changed. Although it is unforgivable, at least there are traces. But Thousand Shadows and Golden Silkworm. Blood Rainbow Celestial's eyes were sharp and murderous. Thousand Shadows could advance 7 steps with the help of the plain core fragment. Now they betrayed us. This is unforgivable. Xan Fu's eyes were also fierce. They hated them so much they wanted to kill, but this was destined to be a beautiful dream. Even if Thousand Shadows and Golden Silkworm advanced 7 steps not long ago and their battle power could not compare to the old powerhouses, they still had the characteristic of immortality. Lin Luo waved his hand. This is already a fact. There is no point in talking about it. What we need now is a countermeasure. This is the last super high-level plane of the Yuan world. We must defend it. Otherwise, everything will be over, Wu Jihong said. Ling Han shook his head. We can't defend it. Blood Rainbow Celestial frowned. Don't destroy our morale. This is the truth. Ling Han said. He dared to fight 7 steps when he was 5 steps. Now, he would not be afraid of 7 steps. But they were on the same side, so his attitude was more relaxed. Disregarding frenzy, the opponent's strength at 7 steps is the same as ours. Their battle power is also very compatible. So, if they target us one by one, no one can stop frenzy. All the Supremes were silent. It was easy to say such bold words, but in the face of the bloody truth, they could not pretend not to see it. Then what do you think we should do? Xian Fu looked at Ling Han. Ling Han thought about it and said, first, second, retreat. What did he mean? Everyone looked at Ling Han. They had to admit that Ling Han was the biggest support of the Yuan world now. Ling Han said, it is impossible to defend the Xian Mo plane. Thus we will wait. When this plane is engulfed in a frenzy, we will pluck the grain from the fire and snatch the core of the plane. If we can get the plane core, Brother Xen, Brother Wu, Brother Bai, and Lady Lin can all advance 7 steps. If they reach the 7th step, even if their combat strength can't catch up for a while, they will have the indestructible body and have the right to fight against frenzy. Even if there are only 4 of us, we can at least slow down the frenzied pace. In addition, let's retreat to the lower planes. Let them devour everything and buy me some time. He paused. I still have a lot of room for improvement. I haven't reached the peak of the 6th step. The so-called peak of the 6th step was not the perfection of the 5 essential powers, but the plane within his body. Everyone clenched their teeth. His strength soared all the way, from barely suppressing a peak of the 7th step to suppressing 5 supreme beings by himself. In the end, he could even resist the berserk, pushing it back. These were all things he did at the 6th step. With such a leap, it would not be surprising to say that he had gone from the 7th step to the 8th step, but this guy had not even cultivated to the peak of the 6th step. How could it not be shocking? Ling Han glanced at the others again and said, we can start moving now. We'll move the people from the medium planes to the lower planes as much as possible. We can even directly retreat to the last plane in the immortal region and fight to the death with frenzy and the others. This determination was too big. He retreated to the end with 1 step, not leaving a way out for himself. How ruthless! The 7 supreme beings looked at each other and fell into deep thought. Once they really fell into that state, there would be no way out. Even detonating the origin world to perish together with frenzy would be impossible. It's impossible now. Ling Han shook his head. Since frenzy has suffered such a loss, it's impossible for him to fall in the same ditch again. This was very disappointing, but the 7 supreme beings nodded slowly. If it was them, it was impossible for them to suffer the same loss twice in a row, let alone frenzy. Frenzy turned into a plane to avoid the destructive bombardment of the origin world. The plane was too big. If his main body hid in a corner, he might be able to escape. All right, I agree. Lin Luo was the first to nod. I agree too. Zhou Heng nodded. I agree. Chu Hao was the third to express. After hesitating for a moment, Xen Fu and the others finally nodded slowly. Since Ling Han still had room for improvement, then they would place their bets on him. Since everyone has reached a consensus, let's start. Don't waste time. Lin Luo said. They didn't need to ask for the opinions of others at all. Without reaching the 7th step, there was no qualification to discuss with them. The 7th step was the god of celestial venerables. Ling Han crossed the plane and sent all the important people to the immortal region first. Arriving at this familiar place, Ling Han couldn't help but feel emotional. After going 1 round, did he still have to settle everything here? The other celestial venerables naturally received the news and began to move with their clansmen. In short, they sent as many people as possible. These were all living beings. If they could save one, it was one. They were the seeds of the future. After settling the worries, Ling Han began his closed-door training. What was most needed now was his combat power. If he could have overwhelming power, he could solve all problems. Before his closed-door training, there was one thing that slightly distracted him, and that was Wang Chuanhe's disappearance. He couldn't find him no matter how hard he tried. It was as if he had completely disappeared from this world. There was no such person at all. This guy was a celestial venerable and had enough self-protection ability. He had an explosive luck attribute, so he shouldn't be in any danger. Ling Han thought for a moment, put aside his worry about this descendant, and officially began his closed-door training. He activated all the celestial venerable symbols in his body, communicated with the void, and drew a huge amount of intrinsic power to refine his body. On the other hand, his plane was also developing vigorously. It automatically drew energy from the void, turning it into nourishment for the plane, and propelling the development of the plane. Since there was already life in the plane, could he send the life from the outside world in? Ling Han thought. He thought of the worst-case scenario. If he couldn't stop the madness, he would use his body as the origin world to carry all the life now. I hope it doesn't have to come to this. Although he thought so, Ling Han still tried it, sending the queen and the others into a plane in his cells. The result was feasible. Ling Han breathed a sigh of relief. That meant that as long as he didn't die, the people around him would be safe forever. He focused on cultivation. The Xuanma plane was already inevitably going to be destroyed, so they definitely had to obtain the plane core. This could allow their side to gain a few more 7-step prodigies. Furthermore, he might be able to push his cultivation level up another level and reach the peak stage of the 6th step. Time, what he lacked was time. Time flew, and 600 million years passed in the blink of an eye. Ling Han received news that the Xuanma plane had already been more or less swallowed by the madness, and the plane core was about to be exposed. Depart. Ling Han, Lin Luo, and the other 7-step sovereigns arrived at the Xuanma plane. By now, this super high-level plane didn't live up to its name anymore. It was so small that it could only be compared to a city. Reading on his phone is more refreshing. Chapter 3075. In these hundreds of millions of years, Ling Han had not only been cultivating, but also deducing all the first-rate symbols. He skipped the second-rate symbols and first created the first-rate symbols, wanting to maximize his battle prowess. He hadn't used them before because they were meaningless. Even if madness and annihilation were beaten to the ground, so what? They were immortal. Now that it was the most crucial moment of fighting for the plane core, he wouldn't hold back anymore. Hong, under the support of 8,000 times the strength, Ling Han's whole body glowed, and the sound of his blood surging was like the heavens and the earth cracking. He punched out, annihilating all movement. Only his fist sliced through the sky, illuminating the stars. Pung, so what if it was madness and annihilation? Faced with such an explosion, they were no match at all, and were all sent flying. Ling Han attacked Chong Yen and the others again, sending them flying as well, making space for Lin Luo and the others to collect the plane core fragment. Ling Han. Annihilation roared. In that short instant, more than half of the plane core fragment had been taken by Lin Luo and the others. She was filled with hatred, but didn't attack Ling Han again. Instead, she went to chase the plane core fragment. Get lost. She struck out with a palm, and Xan Fu was instantly sent flying. There was no suspense. The difference in power was too great. She reached out and grabbed again, obtaining a plane core fragment. On the other side, Madness also attacked aggressively, taking a fragment. After all, they were the two strongest people in the world. Aside from Ling Han, no one could resist their edge. Ling Han took a look. The core fragments of the plane had already found their own masters, and the majority of them had landed on his side. Thus, he roared and said, "Go!" Lin Luo and the others didn't linger. Their goal here was the plane core, and now that it was divided, was there any need to linger? With Ling Han bringing up the rear, the 7 paragons retreated together. When Lin Luo and the others left, Ling Han guarded the passage between the two realms and said calmly, "The next time we fight, it will be a life and death battle." Annihilation and Frenzy did not attack again. Frenzy could not chase into another plane, and if Annihilation was alone, his combat power was slightly inferior to Ling Han's. So why did he chase after them? Was he looking for a beating? Humph! Who doesn't know how to boast? When the time comes, you will naturally know who will fall, Extermination said coldly. Ling Han turned around and left, ignoring him. After returning to the plane of the immortal region, Lin Luo and the others distributed the plane core fragments. Of course, this was for Lin Yu Lian, Wu Haoyang, and the others. As long as they could take 7 steps forward, it would greatly change the current situation. Ling Han had also obtained a few fragments. He was the main force fighting against Frenzy, and extinction. Increasing his strength was the most important thing. He thought about it and decided not to use the fragments immediately. Instead, he put them away. He still had some time. He wanted to rely on his own efforts to advance to the peak of the 6th step, and then use these fragments to help him advance to the 7th step. Of course, the possibility of this was infinitely small. Even if a complete plane core was given to Ling Han, it might not be able to help him successfully advance to the 7th step. Ling Han was patient and held his breath. He put down all his burdens. What he needed to do now was to increase his cultivation. This was the key to solving everything. Lin Yu Lian, Xen Chihu, and the others were also in seclusion to refine the plane core. Even if they could break through to the 7th step, this was not something that could be done in a day. It would take hundreds of millions of years. Since Lin Luo and the other Supremes had nothing to do, they attacked Frenzy at the front lines, trying to slow down its pace of attack and buy time for Ling Han and the others. However, Chong Yen and the others were not to be trifled with. Lin Luo and the others were completely futile. After the Xuanma plane, not only were there no more super high-level planes, but there were also no more high-level planes. Frenzy's devouring speed naturally skyrocketed. Destroying a plane only required the effort of 1,000,000 years. And as it devoured more and more planes, its speed was still accelerating. Hundreds of thousands of years for one plane, hundreds of thousands of years for one plane. When all the middle-level planes disappeared, Frenzy's devouring speed was reduced to less than 10,000 years. Fortunately, heavenly venerables below the 7th step were all helping to evacuate the living beings in those planes. However, planes were so big. Even heavenly venerables had their limits. Those that could be moved to the celestial territory were actually less than 1%. 5 billion years later, Ling Han finally came out of seclusion. He had already advanced all the planes in his body to a higher level. Now that he was limited by his realm, every plane had reached its limit. He could not advance any further and advance to a higher level. At this time, White Rice, Lin Yu Lian, and the others also came out of seclusion. They had withstood the pressure and successfully advanced to the 7th step. After they stabilized their realm, they would be very helpful helpers. Ling Han gathered Ning Haixin and the others who had light orbs in their consciousness. Now that his strength had improved, he might be able to find out more secrets in their light orbs. This involved the secret of the origin world. It was the most precious treasure. They resonated with the light orbs in their consciousness again. Hong, under the impact of the raging waves, Ning Haixin and the others fainted. However, Ling Han withstood this kind of impact. In that split second, he had peeped into many secrets. Why Ning Haixin had such a strong affinity, why Ma Chenggao's divine soul was so powerful, why Fei had an unparalleled understanding of formations, and why he was skilled in alchemy in the past. He was unreasonably strong. He could learn any alchemy recipe once he learned it, and he could even create new alchemy recipes out of thin air. This was the code of the entire origin world. The previous life code was only a part of it. Of course, it was also the most important part. The other abilities could only be said to be icing on the cake. Intense changes were happening in Ling Han's body. In his consciousness, a golden lotus bloomed, and comprehension bloomed like a flower. All the life code that he had obtained appeared. This was still a missing part, but now the missing part was automatically manifesting and condensing into a ring. Ling Han sensed that in a faraway place, there were people similar to him resonating, and there was more than one. Annihilation, Wang Chuanha. It was as if this had connected them together, crossed time and space, and interweaved the essence of the world. Ling Han did not know if Annihilation had seen these life code, but he felt that this flash was too short. He had been completely prepared, but he had almost missed it. Annihilation had been caught off guard and should not have been able to catch it in time. He digested this code, and only felt that his body had undergone an inexplicable change, but he could not say what it was exactly. Time passed quietly, and another 900 million years had passed. Ling Han was forcibly summoned. There was no other way. Madness had already invaded the foreign land. As long as the foreign land was destroyed, it would be the celestial realm. Completing these last 2 steps, Madness had achieved its goal and devoured the entire origin world. Reading on the phone. Chapter 3076. The final battle was about to arrive. Ling Han made the final preparations and tried to take as many people into the plane in his body. This tiny celestial realm was already overcrowded. There were countless planes in his body, and they were all high-level enough to accommodate a 6th-step celestial venerable. Including the Empress, Hu Niu, and the others, Ling Han took them all into his body. In this aspect, no one could compare to Ling Han. For example, Lin Luo, Zhou Heng, and the others had 1 or 2 planes in their bodies, but though they had cultivated their planes to a high-level, they could not give birth to life. Without the life code, how could life be created? This was something only Ling Han could do. Extinction might also be able to do it, because she had also intercepted the life code, but not as much as Ling Han. Thus, after the 7th step, all living beings entered Ling Han's body, and he seemed to have become an origin world. In the outside world, there were only a few 7 steps left. Lin Luo, Xen Fu, Wu Jihong, Bai Fan, and Blood Rainbow Heavenly Venerable, the 5 old 7 steps, and Zhou Heng, Chu Hao, Lin Yu Lian, Wu Haoyang, Xen Chi Hu, and Bai Fan, the 6 new 7 steps, a total of 11 people. Together with Ling Han, this was the lineup for the final battle against Madness. The foreign plane was quickly falling, devouring almost the entire Yuan world. The current Madness was already incomparably powerful. The devouring speed had also reached a new height. In just a trifling 300 years, the foreign plane had completely disappeared. A trifling low-level plane wouldn't be of much help to Madness, but devouring all other planes was a complete process. He couldn't give up just because the immortal region and foreign realms were too weak. That would make it incomplete. Ling Han was still cultivating. Previously, he had focused all his energy on studying the secrets of the origin world such as the life code, so he had not completely deduced the second-rate heavenly venerable symbols. Since he was idle, he sat cross-legged, his mind continuously comprehending. He had already obtained all the secrets of the origin world, and with such support, deducing the heavenly venerable symbols became extremely easy. This was originally just a method to communicate with the intrinsic power. However, after 3 years, Ling Han opened his eyes, which were filled with densely packed symbols. He was obviously sitting there, but Lin Luo and the others all had a feeling that he was so far away, as if Ling Han had entered into another dimension. With a thought from Ling Han, 9 runes appeared on his body. These were all the Empyrean symbols, from the 9th tier to the 1st tier, complete and flawless. Every single symbol was resonating. Even though they were releasing energy, they were also being charged, growing and multiplying endlessly. Where to go? It was a perfect cycle, a whole. Ling Han gave an O, and with another thought, the 9 runes fused again, turning into a Tai Chi diagram. Yin, yang, life, death, positive, and negative, they mutually opposed and generated each other. Ling Han tore open the void and casually flicked his finger. Pung! The void instantly exploded. This destructive power was terrifying to the extreme. A 100,000 times increase in strength. When all the Empyrean runes revolved together, and in a situation where they were fused together, the increase in strength was as high as 100,000 times. Pooh! Ling Han immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. This power was too strong, and it was a huge burden on Ling Han's body. His body of 6 steps was actually unable to bear it. On the other side, Lin Luo and the others stared with wide eyes. The destructive power of this attack was too terrifying, and they were all moved. If this hit their bodies, would it kill them as well? Perhaps their physical bodies could not be destroyed, but if their spiritual seas suffered such an attack, their souls would most likely scatter. This guy was only 6 steps, so how could he have such astonishing room for growth? However, it was also very difficult for Ling Han to unleash such an attack. After all, he did not have an indestructible body, and he could not bear the surge of such power. Ling Han, how are you? Everyone asked. Ling Han's face was full of depression. He could not imagine that the current problem was not that his strength was insufficient, but that his physique could not keep up. Fortunately, the planes in his body all emitted a strong aura of life. In just an instant, his slightly cracked skin immediately healed, and he recovered to his original state. Empyreans were hated by heaven and earth, so heaven and earth could not nourish Empyreans. However, Ling Han's body had formed a world, and the planes in his body were his cells, a part of him. How could they not nourish him? This kind of explosion was not a small burden for him, but as long as it was not too frequent, he could still bear it. "The final battle is about to begin," said Xian Fu. With the acute senses of 7 steps, he could already sense a terrifying aura approaching. It was indescribably powerful. That was frenzy, which had devoured almost the entire origin world. No one could imagine how powerful it had become. Bang! Everyone felt the ground shake, and they saw that the originally clear sky had instantly turned pitch black. Fortunately, they were all Empyreans, and they could see clearly no matter how dark it was. Rebirth. Countless tentacles fell from the sky, pressing down on the entire immortal region. Frenzy attacked. Frenzy attacked. It wanted to devour this final plane and complete its ultimate goal. The immortal region, the place where Ling Han had started, would now become the final battlefield. The beginning and the end. Kill! Ling Han and the others all charged out. They directly tore open the void and jumped out of the plane. From the void, one could see an indescribably huge octopus stretching out countless tentacles, surrounding the plane of the immortal region. To make a comparison, if frenzy was a huge mountain, then the immortal region was just a stalk of grass. Of course, they could not just stand by and watch. They all charged out and attacked frenzy, wanting to stop it from devouring the immortal region. "Sai, why can't you all be more obedient? How good would it be to be like a turtle hiding in its shell like before?" Miju's voice traveled over. She led Yen and the others out. Her gaze swept over, and after discovering that Ling Han and the others had joined Lin Yu Lian and the other 3, she could not help but smile. "So you have helpers? No wonder you dare to come out and fight. However, you are not the only ones who have helpers." She looked behind her. "Come out." 1. A figure walked over from an endless distance, emitting a powerful aura that could suppress the heavens. This was a 7-step supreme being. Another 7-step martial artist actually appeared in the world. But when he saw this person's appearance, Ling Han instantly felt a sense of disbelief from the bottom of his heart, and he was extremely shocked. Wang Chuanhe. This newly advanced 7th step was actually Wang Chuanhe. How could that be? To say nothing of anything else, how many years had it been? How could someone who had once been a heavenly body tier elite become a 7th step venerable tier? Moreover, Wang Chuanhe's talent could only be said to be ordinary. It would be difficult for him to become an immortal king just by relying on his own hard work, let alone becoming an Empyrean. However, right now Wang Chuanhe was standing right in front of him, the power of 7 steps surging, not the slightest bit fake. End of chapter. Chapter 3078. Ling Han's battle with frenzy and annihilation had already surpassed the 7-step level. It was not something that Lin Luo and Chong Yen could interfere with. Even if frenzy and annihilation were still at the 7th step in theory, and Ling Han was only at the 6th step, they were far beyond the peak of the 7-step level. Ling Han fought bitterly. He was very powerful, and after he completely grasped the heavenly venerable tier symbols, his explosive power had truly reached a terrifying level. Perhaps even a body of 7 steps would be destroyed with a single strike, or even be smashed to pieces. But the power of frenzy and annihilation was also incomparably strong. After dissolving most of his attacks, the indestructible body of a 7th-step expert could withstand the remaining power. On the other hand, Ling Han was only at the 6th step, and his physique was his weakness. After a long battle, this weakness was gradually exposed. He was bathed in blood, and even his meridians were beginning to boil as if they were about to explode. Ling Han, the arrival of the Great Era cannot be stopped. If you insist on going against the trend, you will only be crushed to death. Extermination laughed loudly. Although she and Frenzy were continuously being blasted back, there was no substantial effect. On the other hand, It was Ling Han who was ultimately going to be worn down. Why not embrace the new era? Ling Han laughed. What kind of bullshit new era is this? I want to shatter it all. Idiot. Annihilation's expression was cold. Then die. Two peerless villains attacked Ling Han together, forcing him to use his full strength. He could not relax at all and let him injure himself. If this continued, whether it was 10 years or 100 years, Ling Han would eventually be tormented to death by himself. Lin Luo and the others naturally understood and were anxious. This kind of battle was no longer something they could participate in. It was a small matter if they went up and were directly sent flying. They might even be crushed to pieces. Chong Yen and the others were very happy. They had been bullied by Ling Han too badly. Even Fifth Sovereign had been suppressed by Ling Han. Golden Silkworm had almost become Ling Han's servant, and Thousand Shadows had run away as soon as they saw Ling Han, leaving behind shameful memories. Now that Ling Han was in a terrible situation, they were naturally very happy. This unfilial son is finally going to taste retribution. I've let him live for so long. It's time to take his life. White Rice hollered, "Shut up." He then attacked. However, their strength was similar, and 7 steps could not injure 7 steps. Even if Chong Yen and the others did not block, they would still be fine. This attack could not injure them at all. However, 7 steps naturally wanted face. Who would be willing to be sent flying everywhere? Thus, Chong Yen and the others still retaliated, and the two sides once again engaged in a fierce battle. Ling Han was also aware of his own situation. If he continued to erupt like this, he would definitely be torn apart by the terrifying power within his body. He must not die. Otherwise, the people in the planes in his body would die with him. Then what do we do? Retreat. Let chaos devour the immortal region. This won't do. Ling Han shook his head in his heart. There was only one way to go. He took out a few fragments of the realm core and pressed them against his chest, immediately beginning to refine them. This was the core of the Shen Mo plane. He had kept it for the sake of breaking through to the 7th step. Now he needed a 7th step physique. Come, let's see if he could sense the 6th source of power under such high pressure. As long as he could sense it, he could extract a trace of power to refine his body. Then, his physique would immediately reach the 7th step of indestructible. In that case, the rebounding force that caused him to vomit blood and his skin to explode would be nothing. Chaos and extinction would no longer be a threat. On the contrary, he opened the upper limit of raising the plane to a higher level. When that time came, he would become stronger and stronger. Only he could suppress chaos and extinction. Come, let's take a gamble. He refined the fragment of the plane core because the plane extracted the source of power from the void and turned it into its own power. This source of power was absorbed and converted through the plane core. Thus, refining the plane core would allow him to see the source of power. Most importantly, Ling Han's own power was too strong. It severely affected his ability to sense the final source of power. On the other hand, this was just a fragment of the plane core. It was not complete, so the effect would be much weaker. Thus, it depended on whether Ling Han could withstand the immense pressure. Ling Han shouted in his heart. He opened every pore on his body to sense the only unknown particle. Annihilation and Madness saw this and sped up their attacks. They wanted to prevent Ling Han from breaking through to the 7th step. Boom! The battle between the two of them was incredibly intense. Ling Han continuously spat out blood. This was not caused by the attacks of frenzy and annihilation, but rather by his own backlash. His injuries were getting worse and worse. Even with the powerful vitality of the plane in his body, the recovery speed could not keep up with the damage to his body. A cruel smile appeared on Annihilation's face. Die. I can't help but want to devour your body and learn all your secrets. Ling Han did not speak. He just fought with all his might. 1 day, 3 days, 10 days. This was too unexpected for Annihilation and Madness. Ling Han actually held on, even though his situation was getting worse. This person's will was too terrifying. But everything ends here. Annihilation sneered and attacked even more fiercely. Bang! Blood burst out of Ling Han's body. Then he had no more strength to fight back. Madness and annihilation would not hold back. This was naturally taking advantage of his weakness to take his life. They poured their attacks on Ling Han. This guy's physique was not indestructible. Thus, as long as they could create an opening, they could completely blast him to pieces. An endless storm of energy exploded. The two peerless villains attacked in a frenzy. This was too frightening. In the surging storm of energy, Lin Luo, Chong Yen, and the others could not see clearly. But they knew that the odds were against Ling Han. After all, he had a body at the sixth step. Once his body's defenses failed, he would definitely be blasted to pieces. Lin Luo and the others were very anxious. Putting aside the fact that Chong Yen and the other Supremes were holding back, even if they were let go, could they stop madness and annihilation? Any one of them could seriously injure them, or even kill them. What should they do? Was this the end? Was the situation hopeless? Madness and annihilation finally stopped, and the storm of energy also slowly dissipated. When the void stabilized, they saw that Ling Han was floating in the air, his limbs hanging limply. His body and surroundings were covered in blood. The expressions of Lin Luo and the others changed drastically. They could no longer sense Ling Han's aura. Then everything would really be over. Haha. Chong Yen and the others laughed loudly. They had waited for this day for a long time. Annihilation suddenly turned around. She had been about to attack Lin Luo and the others. Madness also stopped. It had been about to devour the plane of the immortal realm. In the void, Ling Han's finger moved slightly. Chapter 3080. Destroying a plane, and a super high-grade one at that. Given the number of planes, Ling Han couldn't bear to do so. Extinction was really ruthless. Patriarch, I was wrong. Wang Chuanhe shouted. He wanted to release the power of 7 steps and fight extinction with all his might. But the difference in power was too great. In extinction's hands, he was like a chick in the claws of an eagle. He couldn't resist at all. Ling Han wanted to rush over, but extinction only slapped Wang Chuanhe once, and he coughed up blood. He suddenly had no strength to rush over. This blood kill method was not an ordinary secret technique. It involved the secrets of the origin world. Ling Han was helpless. Extinction had paid such a huge price. How could it be so easy to resolve it? Hurry up and do what you should be doing. Extinction shouted at Frenzy. Frenzy stared at her. This was its previous incarnation, but now it felt a strong sense of unfamiliarity. What kind of existence was it? It was naturally unhappy to be scolded like this, but it endured it. As long as it devoured the celestial realm, the entire origin world's power would be added to its body. At that time, it would be the strongest expert, able to suppress and kill any existence. All right, I'll let you be arrogant for now. Frenzy flew towards the celestial realm. It was only a temporary partnership with extinction. It couldn't tolerate any existence that could be above its head. Ling Han wanted to stop it, but he couldn't move at all. Extinction had only slapped Wang Chuanhe once, and he felt as if he had suffered a heavy blow. His face turned pale. He could definitely take it better than Wang Chuanhe. Even if Wang Chuanhe was killed by extinction, he wouldn't die. But the problem was that extinction only needed to restrain him and let frenzy devour the last plane. What about Lin Luo and the others? There was nothing they could do. What should they do? Even if Ling Han had already advanced 7 steps and had unparalleled combat power, could he still not prevent the worst from happening? Although Lin Luo and the others all hoped that this was a dream, things didn't go as they wished. Frenzy had already enveloped the celestial realm again and started to devour it. At its speed, the celestial realm would definitely disappear in 10 years at most. 10 years. Could Ling Han change the unfavorable situation in such a short time and turn the situation around? However, looking at the current situation, Ling Han was completely restrained by the blood-killing art. There was no way for him to turn the situation around. The key was Wang Chuanhe. Lin Luo and the others were filled with killing intent. As long as they killed Wang Chuanhe, Ling Han would be freed. Kill Lin Luo and the others all charged towards Mieju. However, Chong Yen and the others were not to be trifled with. Under their efforts, only 4 of them managed to reach Mieju. Are you trying to throw your life away? Mieju sent out a palm strike. Pow, 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 pow. The 4 of them were instantly sent flying, coughing up blood. In front of Ling Han, extermination was completely at a disadvantage, but facing the other 7 steps, she held an absolute advantage. When she delivered a strike, there was not a single 7 steps that could block it. To say nothing of 4, even 10 of them would not be enough. Haha. Extinction laughed loudly. Her long hair fluttered about, and her delicate body trembled slightly. There was a type of exceptional allure to her. The die has been cast 1 month, half a year, 1 year. Lin Luo and the others could only watch as the plane of the celestial domain rapidly disappeared, and Madness also seemed to be undergoing some kind of transformation. Gathering the power of the origin world into one body, what kind of qualitative change would occur? Ling Han still could not get up. Although Wang Chuanhe was about to be completely dismembered by Miju's left and right attacks, the 7 steps possessed an incomparably strong life force. Even so, Wang Chuanhe could not be allowed to die. In fact, the 7 steps could not even commit suicide. 3 years, 5 years, 8 years. The celestial domain was about to disappear, and the originally pitch-black madness actually began to change. First, it turned white, then it turned silver, and finally, it developed towards gold, changing bit by bit. Most likely, when the celestial domain was completely devoured, madness would become completely golden. 9 years, 9.5 years. The core of the celestial domain was about to appear, and Wang Chuanhe was finally killed by Miju. Not dying at the 7 steps depended on the situation. Back then, Empyrean Yellow Sand and Miju's previous life had been killed and destroyed by the power of the origin world's collapse. Now that Miju's power had more or less reached the same level, she naturally could do the same. Ah! Wang Chuanhe let out a scream. His soul floated up, and his physical body was completely destroyed. Lin Luo and the others did not sympathize. He had brought this upon himself. Who asked him to cooperate with Miju and Madness? Asking a tiger for its skin naturally would not end well. One last attack. Miju stretched out a slender finger and jabbed at Wang Chuanhe's divine soul. Relatively speaking, the divine soul of the 7 steps was far less resilient than the physical body. Under this attack, Wang Chuanhe's divine soul was instantly destroyed. This time, he could not be any more dead. Ling Han clutched his head. Under the effect of the blood kill technique, his divine soul also felt as if it had been ruthlessly stabbed by a knife, causing his head to feel as if it was about to split open. But in the next instant, he had already charged out. Target madness, he had to stop him. There was no time. Now that Wang Chuanhe was dead, Ling Han was not in the mood to think. He should feel heartache for this extreme descendant, or perhaps he should say that he deserved it. Ling Han arrived and punched out angrily. Wang, golden light undulated on Madness's body, like ripples in water. The power of this attack was completely spread out and evenly absorbed by Madness's incomparably huge body. The destructive power was instantly reduced by countless times, and it was unable to cause too much damage to Madness. Madness seized the time and devoured madly. Ling Han shouted again and punched out again. Miju arrived in time and met the attack with a palm, but she was immediately sent flying. But with such a reduction in power, the power of Ling Han's attack was naturally greatly reduced. Madness once again took this attack head-on. At this time, the celestial realm had completely collapsed. The plane core flew out as if it was making a final struggle. However, the entire celestial realm was surrounded by madness. How could this plane core possibly escape? Madness opened her mouth again and swallowed the plane core. Spit it out! Ling Han roared as he launched a frenzied barrage of attacks. Peng, peng, peng. In an instant he blasted out countless punches, causing Madness's golden body to continuously tremble. Shua, Madness counterattacked. A tentacle lashed out and hit Ling Han's fist. Wang, terrifying energy vibrated. Ling Han's figure was flipped over, and Madness's tentacle was also bounced back. In this attack, they were actually evenly matched. Hiss, After madness devoured the last celestial realm plane, it obtained the power of the entire origin world, and was powerful to an unimaginable extent. It should be known that it was unable to use the celestial venerate symbol, and could only wield its original power. But this could still contend against Ling Han, whose power had been magnified 100,000 times. How powerful was it? The strongest in the world, fully deserving of its title. Ha ha. Madness laughed loudly. Its power was still increasing, and the power of the origin world condensed endlessly. This feeling of endless power made it feel that everything was under its control. Chapter 3081. The celestial region was destroyed, the origin world was destroyed, and everything returned to madness. All that was left was an endless void. 7 steps undying. Was he going to wander in this endless void forever? Ha ha ha. Madness laughed loudly. It had waited too long for this day. From its previous life until now, after experiencing the destruction of 2 origin worlds, it had finally succeeded. What are you laughing at? Extinction flew over. I've tolerated you for too long. Madness lashed out at extinction. It was now a origin world. With every minute that passed, it grew stronger. Before this, it had needed extinction to hold back Ling Han. Now that it had achieved its goal, did it still need extinction? It did not need to share its success with anyone. Bam. Of course, extinction would not allow madness to attack it. It tried to block, but was immediately sent flying. 10,000 miles away, she steadied herself and smiled coldly. She was not angry at all. I thought you would be more patient. At least you wouldn't turn against me so quickly. Now that things had come to this, Ling Han was no longer anxious. The origin world had been swallowed by madness. Now, madness was the origin world. If it entered its body, then all the rules would be decided by it. He wanted to know why Annihilation had done so many unreasonable things to help Frenzy. What was his goal? Madness was a little suspicious. Although it was big, it had been a person in the beginning. It was just that it had entered this body with its spirit and transformed into a plane. Its intelligence was not the least bit problematic. Naturally, it realized that Extinction's behavior was too abnormal. First, why was Extinction helping it? It did not ask, nor did it care. It only wanted results. Second, now that it had betrayed it, why was Extinction not shocked at all? What was she planning? This was clearly its previous body, but now madness felt a strong sense of unfamiliarity. It felt that this previous body was too foreign. So what if I turn against you? What can you do to me? Madness waved its countless tentacles and emitted divine sense. All of this is under my control, Extinction said mildly, extremely calm. Was it faking? Madness was confused. Who would be a fool if it had the power of a level 7? It would be fine if it had tricked the other with its glib tongue. But the key was that Extinction was the one who had stuck to it. There was no such fool in the world. The problem was, now that it had the power of the entire Yuan world, who could match it? No matter what you're scheming, in the face of absolute power, everything is but a lie. Frenzied lashed out at Annihilation. In just a short while, its power had increased by at least 30%. Yuan extinguishing strike. Extermination snorted and pointed out with a finger, elegant and beautiful. A ray of light entered Frenzy's body, but Annihilation was also sent flying by Frenzy's attack. If it was an ordinary 7th step, this attack would have been enough to blast him into pieces. Haha, is this your backup plan? Frenzied laughed. In the face of absolute power, everything else is useless. Shwa, it whipped out another attack. Annihilation dodged and did not take it head-on. When the origin world was destroyed in the previous generation, countless souls and wills fused together. Among them, there was even the will of the origin world itself, Annihilation said as if he was spreading knowledge to madness. However, Ling Han, Lin Luotian, Chong Yen, and the others were listening carefully. Annihilation might reveal a huge secret. The origin world itself has a will, but it's extremely weak. It only contains the information that it breeds life, Annihilation said. Of course, if there's life, there must be death. And I received such information. Annihilation pointed at herself and smiled, her beauty stunning. Unfortunately, the origin world in the previous generation was destroyed, and most of the information was destroyed. I only have a small part of it. She looked at Frenzied and continued, coincidentally, the part that I got is the death code. Frenzied's expression changed. This was reflected on its huge body, and the color of its body surface changed drastically. As strong as Annihilation was, it would never speak without thinking. Also, Annihilation said, you really shouldn't have transformed into a plane. You learned from the previous life's lesson. After transforming into a plane, even if the origin world collapses, such an attack can't kill you. However, the operation of the origin world has its own rules. There's both a life code and a death code. This is aimed at planes. Frenzied's tentacles danced again, showing the fluctuations of its emotions. Annihilation looked at Ling Han and said, I said that a new era is coming. Why don't you believe me? Ling Han was cold. This Annihilation seemed to have calculated everyone. Previously, it had used Wang Chuanhe to plot against him, and it had long since dug a trap for Frenzied. Who exactly are you? I. Annihilation smiled faintly. There's no rush. It's not time to reveal the mystery yet. She looked at Frenzied. This is the last plane of the origin world. When it is destroyed, the door to a new world will be opened, and we will walk out of this small puddle. Chong Yen and the others were excited. They had joined forces with Annihilation because of this. Besides, when Frenzied died, they would also receive great benefits, and it was possible for them to advance to the 8th step. Nonsense. Bullshit. Frenzied roared. His divine sense rippled and surged, causing waves to form in his sea of consciousness. It waved its tentacles and attacked Annihilation. I'll kill you first. Annihilation dodged. Although her strength could not compare to Frenzied's, she was still one of the strongest 7 steps. She could dodge at least 90% of Frenzied's attacks, and when she could not dodge the occasional attack, she could completely neutralize it. Frenzied, you have transformed into a plane, so you must abide by the laws of the plane. Even if you devour all the planes now, it's useless. There is no such thing as an indestructible plane. Frenzied was still attacking, but very quickly, its body became unstable. Rays of light surged in its body, as if they were about to burst out. Could it be that, as Annihilation said, Frenzied was really going to be destroyed? This was really unbelievable. After devouring the entire origin world, Frenzied should have reached the peak of its life, but at this time, it was showing signs of declining. 1, 2, 3, 4. Annihilation was still counting. When she counted to 59, Frenzied finally had no more strength to attack. Endless light flashed in its body, and its golden body trembled violently. No, I am the greatest existence in the world. I have devoured the entire world, and I will rush out of this world. Frenzied roared, and its divine sense swept through the void. Lin Luo and the others saw this, and they were filled with shock. Was Annihilation going to clear her name? Frenzied's aura became more and more unstable. Its body was expanding, as if it had been blown too much air, and it could explode at any time. End of this chapter. Chapter 3083. Frenzy had self-destructed. A bright light shone, blinding to the eyes. Even an elite like Ling Han could not help but close his eyes to avoid being blinded. But in the next instant, he immediately moved. He flew towards Lin Luo and the others, directly capturing them and placing them under his protection. Boom! Behind him, a terrifying power surged towards him like a raging wave beating against the shore, directly sending him flying. Ling Han resisted with all his might. The power of thousands of planes interweaved into a net, resisting the frightening shock wave behind him. Frenzy's self-destruction formed a destructive shock wave. Now, the entire origin world was gathered on Frenzy's body. Its self-destruction was equivalent to the great collapse of the origin world. Moreover, this was a big explosion formed by the compression of the entire origin world into a plane. Naturally, it was even more terrifying. Without a doubt, Such an attack was something that even Ling Han could not resist. He could only go with the flow and be pushed out by this force. If he fought it head-on, even if he did not die, he would probably be heavily injured, and the plane in his body would at least be destroyed. Rumble, only a loud sound was left in the empty space. The energy shock waves surged past, and even the void storm was completely annihilated. This was no longer a question of how far he was sent flying, but rather how long Ling Han had been pushed by the energy storm at such a high speed. A whole 100 million years. Who would have thought that the big explosion formed by Frenzy's self-destruction would actually last for 100 million years? Only then did the energy storm slow down. Ling Han stood still. He let go of Lin Luo and the others, letting them down. "Go back," Ling Han said. He lifted his foot, and a huge pair of wings spread out behind him. This was formed by the combination of intrinsic power and plane power. With a flap, his speed increased infinitely, and he flew towards the center of Frenzy's self-destruction. Lin Luo and the others followed closely behind. Although there was a huge difference in battle prowess between 7 steps, their speed was about the same. Ling Han was slightly faster, but not by much. Another 100 million years later, Ling Han and the others returned to their original place. After such a wild explosion, even the energy storm in the void had calmed down. However, the void was too vast. Not long after, the energy storm in the endless distance would slowly spread over and restore everything. Perhaps after a few years, a new origin world would appear here. The end of life was death, but death was not the end, it was just a new beginning. In the place where Frenzy had been, there was now a blurry door. Through the door, one could see a blurry world, but it was unclear what was inside. Is this what it means to jump out of a puddle? Above the door, there was a golden sphere that spun around. From time to time, it would release a ray of light that illuminated the starry sky. Xiao, Annihilation, Chong Yen, and the others also flew back. When they saw that door and the golden sphere above it, they could not help but reveal expressions of excitement. Is this what they wanted all along? Xiao, another person flew over from another direction. Ling Han turned his head to look, and he couldn't help but be astonished. It wasn't a human, but an octopus. Its body was around 3 zhang long, and it had 8 tentacles hanging down from its body. Its entire body was golden. Frenzy, this was indeed a much smaller version of Frenzy. Could it still be alive? Annihilation, Annihilation. The octopus stared at Annihilation, its 8 tentacles waving. It seemed incomparably furious. Annihilation glanced at it and said, "So, you still had a trick up your sleeve. You hid your true core in your enormous body. Now that your body has collapsed, the evolution of your true core has saved your life." After suffering in the previous origin world, I'm not that smart anymore. Frenzy said coldly. "It's good that you're not dead. I'll feel a great sense of accomplishment if I destroy you with my own hands," Annihilation said. He suddenly reached out and grabbed, aiming for the golden sphere above the door of light. "In your dreams." Ling Han moved, his figure crashing over and punching out. Annihilation had gone through so much trouble. Her goal should be the sphere. He definitely could not let her succeed. Shwa. Frenzy also moved, waving its tentacles as it charged over. Peng peng peng. The 3 great elites engaged in a fierce battle. Frenzy's strength was definitely the strongest before it had been destroyed, but its existential body had been destroyed. Although its true core had not been destroyed and a new body had been formed, its strength had been reduced by 1,000,000 times. Now, in terms of primal strength, it was even weaker than Annihilation. But on the other hand, it was no longer a plane. What did this mean? It could use the celestial venerable mark. Only one mark lit up on its body, but it increased its strength by countless times. When it waved its tentacles, it actually still had 1/10 of its full strength. Like Ling Han, it had also mastered all the celestial venerable marks. One could imagine how long it had lived and what kind of existence it was. How difficult could it be to derive all the celestial venerable marks? However, on the battlefield, Ling Han still had the advantage. His strength was the strongest, and when he punched out, neither Frenzy nor Annihilation was a match for his punch. Peng, Pung! The two elites were continuously sent flying by him. Now, there was no one who could keep Ling Han in check. He was definitely the world's #1 elite. Could it be that Annihilation's plan for so long was all for naught? Annihilation let out a long howl and charged towards the golden sphere. You're thinking too much. Ling Han sneered. With a big stride, he chased after Annihilation and punched out. Pung Annihilation was actually smashed into pieces by a single punch. Ling Han was shocked. Although his punch was domineering, it should not have this kind of power. After all, it was Annihilation. Indeed, in the next instant, Annihilation's shattered body continued to charge towards the door of light. Then, with the golden sphere as the center, the shattered body immediately reformed. Ha! The secret of the world is mine. She laughed loudly, her black hair fluttering in the wind. Annihilation! Chong Yen and the others all shouted, appearing extremely furious. Previously, they had agreed that they would also have a part in this. It was the key to whether or not they could advance to the 8th step. Do you think that just because I made a Tao oath, I will definitely abide by it? Annihilation laughed loudly, appearing extremely proud. A bunch of idiots. If I achieve the 8th step, I will jump out of this world. How can that so-called Tao oath bind me? This fellow was really sinister, tricking people everywhere. Ling Han rushed over. If the Tao oath can't bind you, then let me beat you up. He punched out, blasting at Annihilation. The two of them fought, but after Annihilation devoured the golden sphere, her strength actually increased in a straight line. In the void, endless energy rolled over and surged into Annihilation's body. Once I absorb the power of the entire void, I will be able to break through that door of the void and enter that new world. Annihilation laughed loudly, extremely proud of herself. Everything was just as she had expected. Chapter 3084. A good story. Ling Han was surprised. He discovered that although most of the energy had surged into Annihilation's body, he had also absorbed quite the bit of it. The 6th type of essential power was growing in his body. As this power grew stronger, the speed at which he extracted the energy also increased. The many planes in his body seemed to have been activated as well. They greedily absorbed the essential power and advanced towards a higher level. Life Code. Ling Han suddenly understood. Frenzy had devoured the entire origin world. Of course, it had also condensed the life code, which contained the core secrets of the origin world. No wonder Frenzy had become so strong just now. But because of Annihilation's trap, its body had exploded, and even the core of the life code had been exposed. Now that Annihilation had obtained the life code, it was complete. Naturally, her power had skyrocketed. Why hadn't he encountered such a situation? Ling Han thought about it and understood. Previously, he had only been at the 6th step. He had been limited by his realm, so his progress had not been fast. This so-called slow speed was actually extremely fast. In just 10 billion years, he had advanced all the planes to a higher level. Now that he had advanced to the 7th step, he had unlocked the upper limit of his realm. Naturally, the speed at which he extracted essential power had increased greatly. Moreover, as his cultivation of the 7th step became stronger and more stable, the speed at which he extracted essential power would increase. Also, the existence of the origin world had previously acted as a sort of balance and restriction. This had definitely suppressed Ling Han's speed. Now it was different. There was no longer the existence of the origin world in the void. The surging power surged towards Ling Han and Annihilation. That's mine. Frenzy roared and charged over. At that time, it had also peeped into a trace of the life code. Otherwise, its power would not have been so strong. When the surging energy surged over, it had also obtained a portion. That golden sphere was not just a simple password. It also had the effect of condensing essential power. Otherwise, even if one had grasped the life code, it would not have been able to absorb it so quickly. Ling Han and the other two fought as they fought to absorb the energy. Chong Yen and the others also wanted a share of the loot. However, they were too weak and could be sent flying with a casual punch or palm. Even if they were strong enough, without grasping the life code, How could they absorb such energy? They could only watch the show. However, this was related to whether or not they could advance to the 8th step. Right now, a huge opportunity had appeared in front of them, but they could only stare at it. This caused their eyes to almost split open, and they were extremely anxious. Lin Luo and the others didn't think that way. They all frowned. Who would be the one laughing in the end? If it wasn't for Ling Han, everything would have been as bad as it could get. Boom. Void energy surged toward him. The void did not have a consciousness and only acted according to some kind of law. From the perspective of the void, if a Yuan world was destroyed, then the next step would be to create a new one. Thus, endless energy was transferred over to create a new world. At the center was the golden sphere, which was the password to the origin world. This energy was so powerful that it was more than enough for Ling Han, Frenzy, and Annihilation to share. In fact, it was so much that they were about to explode from the pressure. Destroying a world was a mighty power, but so was creating a world. The three of them had no choice but to stop and do their best to refine that terrifying energy. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to endure it and their bodies would explode. The three of them sat down and absorbed the endless energy, turning it into their own strength. In Ling Han's body, the 6th essential power quickly reached a state of saturation. He had advanced to the peak of the 7th step. This speed was unbelievably fast, but the current situation was too special. How many opportunities did the origin world have to destroy and create? After reaching the peak of the 7th step, the 6 essential powers reached a perfect balance. Once they operated, they formed a terrifying absorption force. Within Ling Han's body, all of the dimensions were growing vigorously and healthily. If he had obtained the golden sphere, perhaps as long as one or a few planes reached the super high grade, the void would stop the infusion of power. Because there were too many planes in his body, he could evolve them into a new origin world with just a slight increase. But now, the golden sphere was in Annihilation's body, and the number of planes she had was limited. Although she had obtained the life code and could evolve planes, the speed would definitely be very slow. Therefore, when all the planes in her body reached the super high grade, she had no choice but to stop extracting energy. She had to evolve a new plane first and then strengthen it. In this way, how could she compete with Ling Han in terms of speed? There was no need to talk about frenzy. There were no planes in its body, maybe one or two. Very soon, it reached a state of saturation and had no choice but to retreat. Otherwise, it would explode. It waved its 8 claws, full of jealousy and anger. It had devoured the origin world and created this great creation, but it was expelled so quickly that it could not bear it. It whipped at Ling Han and Annihilation, but the endless energy surged and turned into a solid substance. Frenzy's attack did not hit anyone and was directly bounced back by the energy. Frenzy whipped a few more times to vent its anger, but there was nothing it could do. It could only give up and turn its gaze to the light door. Outside was a new world. If it went out and jumped out of this small puddle, then as long as it obtained some opportunity, it would be far more than this little benefit. Moreover, after it went out, it would blow up this light door. You guys stay in this small puddle until you rot. It rushed over, wanting to squeeze into the light door. However, it immediately realized that it could not squeeze into the light door no matter how hard it tried. It seemed to be extremely tough. No matter how it squeezed, it could only squeeze in by an inch at most. It could not get out at all. It shrunk to about an inch in size and squeezed into the light door again. However, its size had shrunk, and the amount of space it could squeeze in was also reduced. It still could not get out. It let out an angry roar. It was fine if it could not obtain that great opportunity, but now it could not even get out. It could not get out. Annihilation. Frenzy attacked the light door. It was not naive enough to think that Ling Han or Annihilation would be so kind as to bring it out when the time came. Therefore, since it was going to be trapped here and rot here, then everyone would do it together. It attacked wildly, but this light door was surprisingly sturdy. No, it could not be said to be sturdy. It was more like it could not withstand any force at all. Frenzy attacked continuously for several days, but there was no effect at all. It tried to drill in again, but found that even the toughness had disappeared. It seemed to be just a projection and did not exist at all. How could something that did not exist be destroyed and penetrated? Frenzy went crazy. It stared at Lin Luo, Chong Yen, and the others. Since that was the case, then it would kill all of them. Chapter 3085. Ling Han desperately extracted energy. Within his body, new planes were born one after another, and the old planes were constantly getting stronger, advancing toward a super high level. After an unknown amount of time, his body trembled, and there was a surge of power in his body. There was a plane that had reached an extremely high level. Then, a second plane reached a super high level. Then, one after another, new planes reached a super high level. Time was still flying, and the number of planes he owned had increased from more than 400,000 to more than 1 million, and more than half of them had reached a super high level. More planes were still evolving, and there were even more planes that were advancing to the super grade. Ling Han really didn't dare to imagine what kind of level his current power had reached. A super high-level plane was equivalent to at least 10 peak 7-step cultivators. Now, the super high-level planes in his body were advancing toward 1 million. How terrifying was this power? It far surpassed the previous origin world. Ling Han was surprised. He realized that the amount of energy he was extracting was decreasing. It wasn't that he couldn't defeat annihilation, which allowed him to extract more energy. It was that the supply of energy was decreasing, so naturally, the amount of energy he could extract was decreasing. Ling Han thought about it and suddenly understood. He and annihilation had joined forces to drain the void. The void was infinite. How could they drain it? Of course, although they had never reached the edge of the void, since it was called a puddle, there had to be an end. It was just that it was too big for Ling Han and the others, so they had never reached it. Now, how much energy had Ling Han and annihilation absorbed? They had made 1 million planes reach a super high level. This was too terrifying. Annihilation couldn't compare to Ling Han, but no matter how little, he must have absorbed at least 100,000. They had forcefully drained the void. Soon, the last trace of energy disappeared. The entire void had become a space of nothingness. There wasn't even any energy left. What? In the distance, Frenzy, Lin Luo, Chong Yen, and the others, who were fighting fiercely, couldn't help but stop. They could no longer draw essence power from the void to replenish their energy. They couldn't even sense essence particles. How could they not be shocked? Once the energy in their bodies was used up, they would slowly wither and fall from step 7 to become ordinary. This shocked and terrified them. Haha. Annihilation laughed heartily. Her beautiful hair fluttered in the wind, and more than 100,000 supreme planes appeared within her body. Her strength was hundreds of millions of times greater than before. After plotting for so long, she had finally achieved her wish. Exterminate, exterminate. Frenzy gritted its teeth. This previous incarnation had conspired to steal all of its opportunities, causing it to hate it to the core. Who the hell do you think you are? Mia Absolute slashed out with his palm in a frenzy. He frantically waved his tentacles to meet the attack, but one of his tentacles was immediately chopped off. Golden blood splattered everywhere, causing some energy fluctuations to appear in this desolate world. You can't even withstand a single blow, Miju said coldly. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. The frenzy that was invincible in the past was now so weak. Mia Extermination looked at Chong Yen and the other 5 Supremes, and a strange smile appeared on his face. I'm really sorry to disappoint you, but there's no helping it. You haven't grasped the life code, so how could you possibly advance to the 8th step? However, I can still bring you out of this place and into a new world. Perhaps this new world is infinitely vast, and the opportunities here are nothing compared to it. Hearing her say this, although Chong Yen and the other 4 were extremely displeased, they could only pinch their noses and accept it. Since there was no hope of advancing to the 8th step, there was only one hope left, and that was to leave this place. They had already tried before, but they had been unable to pass through that door of light, because it didn't exist at all. As long as they left this place and entered a wider world, perhaps they would be able to advance to the 8th step easily. Endure! Chong Yen and the others flew towards Mia Extermination, looking forward to a beautiful future. Ling Han didn't stop them. There was no rush. Although Mia Extermination was countless times stronger, so was he. He would only become stronger. Everything was under control. Chong Yen and the other four, as well as Golden Silkworm and Heavenly Venerable Myriad Shadows, all flew over. They were looking forward to a beautiful future. Mia Extermination revealed a strange smile and said, "Very much looking forward to what kind of world it is outside this puddle." Chong Yen and the other four revealed looks of longing. They had already reached the end of their realm, unable to advance any further. The only way for them to advance further was to jump out of this world. Everyone was curious, especially almighties like them. They wanted to know what kind of world it was outside this world. And this riddle was about to be solved. Blood splattered. Something unexpected happened. They saw Mia Extermination suddenly attack, stabbing Chong Yan's back and directly piercing through his chest. Between his slender fingers, there was a still-beating heart. Chong Yan screamed. So what if he had a seven-step body? His once indestructible body couldn't resist Mia Extermination at all. Mia Extermination retracted her hand, and Chong Yan immediately fell, his face pale. Undying at 7 steps meant that one could still live without a heart, but it was precisely because of the undying at 7 steps that every part of one's body became incomparably precious. Who knew how long it would take to regenerate a heart after it was removed? But why did Mia Extermination suddenly attack? She had no use for these people anymore, so she had to start clearing them out. Poyu, Golden Silkworm, and the others hurriedly retreated, looking at Mia Extermination in horror. The 7 steps that had once dominated everything were no longer high and mighty. In front of Ling Han and Mia Extermination, they were incomparably weak. And Madness, once the number 1 vicious creature, could only retreat to the second line. Previously, Madness had wanted to kill Chong Yen, Lin Luo, and the others, but it could only suppress them and not kill them. With this comparison, it was clear that Mia Extermination and Ling Han's power had left it far behind. But Chong Yen roared angrily. Losing his heart was a huge blow to him. Who knew how many billions of years it would take to recover? Moreover, there was no origin world now, and there was no more energy in the void. How could he recover? Mia Extermination revealed a cruel smile. She attacked, and the sound of bones breaking rang out continuously. Poyu, Big Dipper, and the other 7 steps were also trampled. All of them had their hands and feet broken, and their hearts and lungs dug out. Was this a form of torture? Lin Luo and the others shook their heads. No matter how they looked at it, it looked like she was taking revenge for a personal grudge. Mia Extermination wasn't really Mia Extermination. She was just borrowing this body. Who exactly was she? Did she have a deep grudge against Chong Yen and the others? Haven't you always wanted to know who I am? Mia Extermination sneered. End of this chapter. Chapter 3087. Ling Han had actually intervened to stop Miju's murder. If Miju had wanted to kill Lin Luo and the others, then it was not strange that Ling Han had intervened. But why had he saved Poyu and the others? The scene was truly chaotic and unimaginable. You dare stop me? Miju said coldly, her eyes flashing with flames. Ling Han smiled faintly. I'm going to kill these 4 myself. I'm already very unhappy that you killed one before, and you want to do it again? Miju was furious, her black hair standing on end. She had buried her hatred for Chong Yen and the others for 3,000 eras. What kind of hatred was that? Now that her cultivation had reached the peak, and she had tricked Chong Yen and the others, the most important part was naturally to kill them one by one and reap the perfect revenge. But she had only killed one Chong Yen before she was stopped. Her heart was filled with displeasure and anger. In that case, I'll kill you first. Miju shouted and charged at Ling Han. Ling Han attacked, and Miju clashed with him. Bang bang bang. An intense battle began again. The two's strength had reached a level that even a peak 7-step cultivator could only look up to. A single wave of energy could send a 7-step cultivator flying and even make him vomit blood. Even frenzy could not withstand it and had to retreat under the surging energy. But it was too strong, and energy waves alone could not hurt it. You've become so strong. Miju was shocked. She had thought that after absorbing all the energy in the void, she could crush any existence. She had not expected that Ling Han would not be weaker than her. How was that possible? It had to be known that she had only been able to absorb such a huge amount of energy after obtaining the golden sphere, which was the complete life code. But what about Ling Han? The life code he had obtained was not complete, so how could he compare to her? Miju could not accept this. Ling Han's current strength was completely unreasonable. Surprised, right? Ling Han said faintly. There's something even more surprising than you. He had only used 1/10 of his strength, and that was already enough to fight against Miju. Thus, if he went all out, suppressing Miju would be a piece of cake. Miju gritted his teeth and yelled, "Hateful brat, how dare you steal my opportunity?" What Frenzy didn't know was that if he wanted to break through this puddle, he would need to obtain the energy of the entire void. Only then would he be able to blast open the barrier that transcended the plane level and enter that mysterious and unknown new world. Annihilation knew because she had witnessed the destruction of the origin world twice and had even obtained the consciousness of the origin world. But now, she speculated that half of the power had been obtained by Ling Han, which meant that she could not open that door and enter the new world. How could I do that? This world, including space itself, had been sucked dry, and it was impossible to form a new Yuan world. All that was left was endless loneliness. Who could endure living in such a world for countless eras? Just thinking about it would drive people crazy. No, there's still hope. Annihilation stared at Ling Han. As long as I kill you and obtain your energy, I can still open that door and enter the new world. Stop dreaming. Frenzy laughed coldly. That doesn't exist. Otherwise, I would have left long ago. He was now far from being a match for his previous incarnation, but if he had the chance, he didn't mind attacking this rival of his from his previous life. Annihilation sneered. Idiot, what you see isn't the real door at all. It's a coordinate, a weak point in space. As long as you absorb the power of the void and bombard that point, the real door will open. Oh, so that's how it is. Frenzy, Poyu, and the others suddenly understood. No wonder they couldn't rush out. It turned out that they were too weak and didn't have the qualifications to open that door. It was no wonder that this door didn't seem to exist. It was untouchable and unreachable. Indeed, it was only a guide and not a real existence. Annihilation let out a long howl and used all kinds of techniques to attack Ling Han. However, Ling Han ignored her. Instead, his eyes were fixed on Puyu and the others. You old bastards, I told you to work hard on the front lines. Not only did you not listen, but you hooked up with this dead transvestite who's neither a man nor a woman. You even colluded with Frenzy and caused the destruction of the Yuan world. Let me ask you, do you regret it? His hand moved like a bolt of lightning, and he'd already grabbed a mountain breaker in his hand. When Ling Han had just reached the 6th step, Poyu had already been no match for him. Now, not only had Ling Han reached the 7th step, but he had also absorbed about 90% of the void's energy. There were millions of super high-grade planes in his body. What kind of concept was that? Even 100 million 7-step cultivators might not be able to stop him, let alone a 7-step cultivator. Poyu was shocked, and his whole body was covered in cold sweat. Put him down. Annihilation roared, her tone harsh. She hated Poyu and the others to death, and it was precisely because of this that she had to kill them with her own hands. Otherwise, how would she be able to vent the anger in her heart? After so many years, the only thing that had kept her from going crazy was the motivation for revenge. Now that she was at the peak, just as she was about to taste the wine of revenge, this wine had suddenly been snatched away. How could she not be angry? She was like a crazed demon as she attacked Ling Han with all her might. Lin Luo and the others all had complicated expressions on their faces. A grand 7-step supremacy had now become a toy that was being fought over by others. It wasn't that Ling Han and Annihilation wanted the power of a 7-step supremacy, but that they wanted to kill him with their own hands. Even though they were standing on the opposite side, Lin Luo and the others still felt incomparably emotional. They were also at the 7th step, so it was inevitable that they would have some strange emotions. As for the Big Dipper, Half Moon, and Black Feather Celestial, they all felt sympathy for the death of a rabbit. They had been targeted by Ling Han and Annihilation, and either one of them could easily crush them to death. How could they not feel sad? Once Po Yu died, it would be their turn. Ling Han didn't care at all, casually blocking Annihilation's incomparably terrifying attacks with one hand, while his other hand gripped Po Yu's neck. His 5 fingers exerted force, causing Po Yu's neck bones to emit crackling sounds. What's 7-step Undying Body? In front of the current Ling Han, it was so weak that it couldn't even withstand a single blow. Old thief, do you regret it? Ling Han asked. Regret it, Po Yu said in a hoarse voice. He really regretted collaborating with Annihilation and cutting off his own path of survival. He didn't even know that he had been sold. Unfortunately, they had to deal with a monster like Ling Han. Otherwise, with Ling Han's help against extermination, they might even have a chance of winning. As long as Ling Han won, he would be able to open that door and bring them to a new world. What a beautiful ending that would be. But now, it was too late for regrets. It's good that you regret it. Ling Han nodded. He clenched his fist, and with a pa, Mountain Breaker transformed into a rain of blood. His eyes were cold as he stared at Big Dipper, Shen Yu, and Half Moon. 8. Chapter 3088. No! Miju screamed, as if he had lost his parents, but also as if he had gone crazy. Taking revenge on Chong Yan's group of 5 had become her obsession. She had thought about it countless times, and she had thought about how she would kill them one by one. However, being able to take 7 steps without dying was no joke. It was only now that she finally had the ability to slaughter 7 steps at will. However, Po Yu was killed by Ling Han. That made her heart ache. You bastard, I'll tear you to shreds. Miju attacked with his full strength, wanting to blast Ling Han into pieces. Hee hee. Ling Han smiled faintly. Everything had been under Annihilation's control. Ren Kuang Luan, a 2-generation Great Devil, and Lin Luo, Chong Yen, and other 7-step supreme martial artists had all become her pawns, being played in the palm of her hand. Now, it's no longer up to you. Ling Han stared at Half Moon and charged towards him. Half Moon and the other 2 supreme beings had already begun to flee, but now that there was no longer any intrinsic power for them to draw and use, they could only rely on their own power to display their might, which greatly affected their speed. When it came to power, who could compare to Ling Han? With just a single step, he had already caught up to Half Moon, reaching out to grab her. How dare you! Extermination roared angrily and chased after him. But will she make it in time? Ling Han stretched out his hand, and Half Moon fell into his hand. Old bastard, do you regret it or not? Half Moon gritted his teeth. He had already seen it before. Po Yu said that he would die if he regretted it. Therefore, he had to grit his teeth and not relent no matter what. Regretless. Ling Han exerted more force in his hand, and under the incomparable pressure, Half Moon's bones cracked. His face swelled up to a purplish-red color, and he felt extremely uncomfortable. Miju, on the other hand, stopped. She knew that it was impossible for her to snatch him away from Ling Han. So she had her eyes on Big Dipper and Shen Yu. Although she couldn't get a perfect revenge, it was still better than not killing a single one of them, right? Xiao, she flew toward the Big Dipper. 7-star and Shen Yu didn't know how to describe what they were feeling right now. A dignified 7-step supremacy had actually fallen to the state of being hunted down by others. It was really too sad. 7 steps. They were 7 steps, the greatest in the world. Yellow Sand roared madly and waved its tentacles to meet the attack. It also hated extinction the most, so even though it knew it was no match for it, it still came forward to stop it. Scram! Annihilation chopped down with her hand, and Frenzy was instantly sent flying. Golden blood spurted out as another tentacle was chopped off. But Frenzy was laughing, because Ling Han had already caught up and intercepted extinction. Ling Han shook his head in his heart. This Kuang extermination was really stupid. Even without its obstruction, he could easily catch up to extermination, because he had obtained 90% of the void's power. He was absolutely invincible. Forget it, he didn't need to feel heartache. Do you regret? Ling Han blocked extinction while also suppressing Half Moon. His terrifying power wasn't something a seventh-step physique could resist, causing Half Moon to howl in pain. He persisted for a long time before finally saying, "Regret? I regret it." Firstly, he really couldn't hold on any longer. He had a feeling that death was better than living, and he might as well beg for a good death. Secondly, these were indeed heartfelt words. He regretted listening to annihilation, regretted not using his full strength to kill the weak Ling Han at that time. Fine, then go on your way. Ling Han forcefully squeezed, and Half Moon also turned into a bloody mist. Ling Han! Ling Han! Ling Han! Annihilation roared loudly, her eyes spewing flames of fury, reaching an extreme level. What are you shouting for? It's not your turn yet, Ling Han said indifferently. He looked toward Xian Yu and Seven Star. Who should it be next? Being swept by his gaze, Xian Yu and Seven Star couldn't help but feel a sense of sorrow, as well as endless despair. Annihilation had also fallen into a berserk state. She panted heavily, her face twisted, her beauty completely gone. She suddenly stared at Frenzy, her eyes shining. If she killed it and plundered its power, then she would definitely win against Ling Han, who had originally been evenly matched. Yes, that was how it was. She let out a long howl and charged toward Frenzy. An ordinary seventh step was useless. Its power was not even a millionth of hers, so what was the use of plundering it? Ling Han smiled, and his figure scuttled out. He had actually moved later, but arrived first. He grabbed one of Frenzy's tentacles, and then fiercely flung it out. Bang! Frenzy instantly turned into a beam of flowing light, shooting toward the endless void. It's not your turn yet. Line up and wait for me, Ling Han said. His figure twisted, and he charged toward Seven Star. Seven Star also stopped running. He knew that Ling Han was already so strong that he could insta-kill the heavens and earth. I regret it, he said directly. Rather than being ravaged and then killed, it was better to beg for a good death. Bang! Ling Han punched out, mercilessly blasting Seven Star apart. Since he had betrayed them, then he had to be prepared to die. Ling Han looked at Xian Yu again. His killing intent did not decrease because he had killed 3 Supremes. Instead, it had become even sharper. Xian Yu also accepted his fate, and he closed his eyes. What I regret the most is listening to that bitch's words. Also, I didn't take the chance to kill you. Unrepentant. Ling Han snorted coldly. He punched out and bang, Xian Yu was also killed. At this point, all the Supremes of the previous origin world were dead. Oh no, strictly speaking, there was still Extinction and Frenzy. They had both walked over from the previous origin world. Golden Silkworm and Myriad Shadows trembled. In front of Ling Han, the 7th step was like a toy. He could kill them with a raise of his hand. They had only broken through to the 7th step not long ago, and they had not enjoyed such prestige. They did not want to die at all. What they were afraid of happened. Ling Han had already set his gaze on them. What else do you have to say? Ling Han asked indifferently. What else could they say? Was there any use in saying regret now? Poyu and the others had all been killed. Myriad Shadow's first reaction was to flee. This had already become his normal reaction when facing Ling Han, but now he could not move his legs at all. He felt his entire body was powerless and he could not move at all. Golden Silkworm gritted his teeth and knelt in front of Ling Han. Greetings, Master. Ling Han was startled, and only then did he remember that he had suppressed Golden Silkworm when he was only at the 5th step. He had wanted to take in a 7th step servant, but Golden Silkworm had run away, and he had not thought about this matter again. Now that Golden Silkworm was calling himself a servant, it clearly wanted to exchange for its life. I don't need a dog servant like you, Ling Han said. There was a price to pay for betrayal. How could he be fooled by kneeling and losing his dignity? He stretched out his hands and made a grabbing motion. golden silkworm and myriad shadows landed in his hands. Seventh step? Ah, they were truly trash now. Since you have nothing to say, then die. Ling Han's arms shook. Bang bang, the two supremes immediately turned into a rain of blood. 8. Chapter 3089. Fall in love with you. Extinction's chest rose and fell rapidly. She was angry, extremely angry. Since Ling Han was the one who had stolen and killed her, then she would kill. She charged at Lin Luo and the others. Ling Han snorted, and his figure flashed, blocking in front of Extinction. Your opponent is me, he said calmly. Peng, with a punch, Extinction was sent flying by him. What? Extinction's beautiful face paled. In this blow, she realized that her power was much inferior to Ling Han's. Damned ladyboy, don't disgust me. Ling Han had goosebumps. When he thought of Extinction's flirtatious appearance before, all that was left was disgust. In her bones, Extinction was a man, and she was celestial venerable yellow sand. Extinction screamed. In her opinion, so what if she was a man or a woman? She had already reached the seventh step, so what was the point of caring about gender? But being insulted by Ling Han like this, she really could not bear it. However, she did not engage in a fierce battle with Ling Han. Instead, her figure moved, and she chased after the place where Frenzy had disappeared. Only by killing Frenzy and plundering his power would she be able to compete with Ling Han. Of course, she was overthinking, but this was the only solution she could think of. Xiao, she unleashed a terrifying power, and her slender figure moved at an indescribable speed. She chased after Frenzy while searching for life fluctuations. There was only emptiness here now. There were no more energy storms, so the aura of life could not be concealed. Even the slightest hint of it was extremely obvious. Extinction chased after Frenzy, moving faster and faster. In less than half a day, Frenzy's figure appeared in front of her. 2 of his tentacles had been severed, and he looked rather miserable. Frenzy had now fallen from the strongest level, but he was still unbelievably strong. He could still suppress Lin Luo and the other celestial venerables by himself. The Extinction charged over, her fingers like claws, clawing at Frenzy. Frenzy let out a loud roar and waved his tentacles to attack. Frenzy was at a great disadvantage in this blow. Compared to Extinction, he was much weaker, and one of his tentacles was severed. Don't kill it. It's mine too. Ling Han's voice rang out. He was calm and unruffled in the midst of chaos, like a person protecting his food, warning others not to snatch his food. The reborn Special Forces Annihilation gritted her teeth. She attacked crazily. If she did not kill Insanity and use its power, she would not be able to suppress Ling Han. And if she could not suppress Ling Han, she would not be able to leave this space. She could only go crazy in this void and desolation. Ling Han also made a move. How could he let Extermination kill Frenzy? If he wanted to kill them, he would have to do it himself. He easily blocked Extinction with one hand, his eyes fixed on Frenzy. Frenzy's remaining 5 tentacles fluttered lightly. Facing Ling Han, it felt an unprecedented chill. Xiao, its figure moved, and it took the initiative to pounce. However, its target was actually not Ling Han, but rather Extermination. Courting death? Even Ling Han did not expect this. He was killed by Frenzy and charged at Extinction. Not bad, not bad. You're going to die anyway, so why not give your power to me? At least I'm still your previous life's body. Extinction laughed loudly. Her slender hand reached out, and it directly penetrated Frenzy's head. Boom, Frenzy's 5 tentacles surged wildly, and its golden body was rapidly dimming. Its energy was rapidly draining, and it was constantly being plundered by Extinction. Ling Han wanted to stop it, but on second thought he decided not to. In reality, he alone had absorbed about 90% of the Void's power. The remaining power was divided between Frenzy and Extinction, and among them, Extinction had taken about 90%. Thus, whether Frenzy's power was absorbed by Extinction or not was not affected at all. He would let her rejoice for nothing. Ling Han watched from the sidelines. Very soon, Mia Extermination would find out that what she was facing was an insurmountable mountain. Very soon, Frenzy's golden body turned silver, then white, and finally black, as if it was regressing. This process was very fast. Extinction shook lightly, and Frenzy turned into flying ash, completely disappearing. The great villain that had once harmed 2 generations of the origin world was gone just like that. Xiao. Lin Luo and the others also rushed over, and just happened to see this final scene, and could not help but be filled with emotion. Ling Han. Extinction shouted loudly. After absorbing Frenzy's power, her power increased by more than 10%, making her full of confidence that it was enough to suppress Ling Han. At their level, not to mention 10% increase in power, even 10% was shocking, and could even change the situation of the battle. EXO's blood dance. I'm not deaf, you don't have to shout so loudly, Ling Han said calmly. He even dug his ears, appearing indifferent. I want you, Miju said, but before the word die could leave her mouth, she was stunned. Then she suddenly hugged her head. Frenzy, you're really haunting me. I've already destroyed your physical body, but you still entered my sea of consciousness with your divine soul. Ling Han's expression darkened slightly. This, I want you, was not clearly stated, but it was very ambiguous, and the one who said it was a damn transvestite. Just thinking about it made him feel disgusted. You want to fight with me for the control of this body? You're really dreaming. Extinction roared. Get out, get out. But then Extinction said, this body was originally mine. Even if you refined it, it is still more compatible with my soul. I am the master of this body. Get lost, I've planned for so many years, and this is the result today. You want to reap the fruits of my labor? Winner takes all, why do you have so much nonsense to say? Extinction seemed to be talking to herself, but Ling Han, Lin Luo, and the others all knew that this was actually the 2 souls of Extinction and Frenzy fighting for the control of this body. It seemed a little confusing to say it this way. Since Frenzy's physical body had been destroyed and returned to the original body, it was better to call her Extinction, and Extinction was actually heavenly venerable yellow sand. The 2 souls were fighting, and a strange scene appeared. On Extinction's neck, another head actually grew. The original head shouted harshly. It represented yellow sand, of course. This is my body. Even after being refined by you for so many years, I can still get half of the control, the new head said. This was naturally Frenzy, which was also the earliest version of Extinction. Get out. You're the one who gets out. The 2 heads shouted at each other, and each commanded one of their hands to fight. Ling Han felt a little speechless. Was this still the world's most ferocious creature? Why did it look like a freak and a retard? Forget it, I don't want to watch this kind of show, it's disgusting. Since the 2 ferocious creatures had merged into one, then I'll deal with them together. Ling Han punched out, and blasted a punch at Extermination. Extinction's 2 heads roared at the same time, and each commanded one of its hands to meet Ling Han's attack. Reading a refreshing novel was enough. Chapter 3091. Miju's spirit was very powerful. Now, it was the fusion of 2 souls, and the former Heavenly Lord Yellow Sand was even more impressive. He had fused the souls of countless living beings in the previous origin world. Even if more than 90% of the souls had been turned into ashes in the collapse of the origin world, even if only 1% remained, when fused into one person's body, it was still indescribably powerful. Therefore, Miju was sufficiently confident that she could compete with Ling Han for control of her body, even if it was Ling Han's body. Peng, with a heavy punch, Miju's spirit was immediately shattered, but these fragments entered Ling Han's body and gathered toward his spiritual sea. Every time a fragment gathered, Miju's spirit would become slightly stronger. When it arrived at Ling Han's spiritual sea, she had also taken human form. Being shattered by Ling Han's punch was naturally a heavy blow to Miju's spirit. Now, there was less than 1% of its strength left, but this was enough. It was far more than 10,000 times stronger than an ordinary Step 7. Outside, Miju's physical body had no spirit to control it, so it naturally could not resist. It was just blown up by Ling Han's punch. Endless energy surged and turned into rolling waves. Ling Han's body automatically absorbed this incomparably vigorous energy. If he finished absorbing it, it would be equivalent to the energy of the entire void and the entire origin world gathering in his body. This was endless power. However, Lin Luo and the others were nervous. Miju's spirit had not yet been destroyed, and it had still entered Ling Han's body. If she took control of Ling Han's body, then all the good fortune would be hers. Ling Han, you must hold on. You can't fall at this last step. In the spiritual sea. Miju strode forward, heading straight for the core of the spiritual sea. She wanted to find Ling Han's spirit and kill it. Then, she could easily plunder Ling Han's physical body. Look for me. Ling Han appeared, his soul also in human form. He stood there with his hands clasped behind his back, and he didn't seem nervous at all. Extermination looked at Ling Han and showed a cold smile. You are too conceited. Although your physical body is invincible, in terms of the strength of your soul, you can't possibly compare to me, no matter how hard you try. You are destined to be killed by me, and this body of yours will become my new physical body to head to a new world. And all of this is not fated with you. Ling Han shook his head. You talk too much and waste my time. So, hurry up and disappear from me. He took the initiative to attack and threw a punch at Extinction. If you fight me here, your own strength won't be of any use. Miju cackled and sent a palm strike at Ling Han. Bam! This strike was solid, but it did not set off any waves. This was a confrontation of divine senses. But Extinction's expression changed drastically, and she was immediately sent flying. Her body was torn apart and turned into countless pieces. Fortunately, this was only a soul. Extinction's body quickly reassembled and returned to its original state, but it was obvious that her body size had shrunk. This attack had caused great harm to her. How can your soul be stronger than mine? Her face was full of disbelief. Ling Han smiled faintly. You fused with many souls from the previous Yuan world and thought you were very powerful, right? But you didn't expect that the number of planes in my body now far exceeds the sum of the 2 Yuan worlds. Moreover, they are all of a very high level, and they have also evolved living beings. All living beings have their own will. How can you compete with these combined wills? Even if Extinction's soul was not injured, and she had fused with all the souls in the collapse of the Yuan world, it was still impossible for her to compare with Ling Han, not to mention that she had been discounted several times. If she could still be stronger than Ling Han, then that would be unreasonable. Now, get out of my body. Ling Han charged over and punched out. Ping! Extinction was instantly sent flying. Her figure dimmed, and she was once again heavily injured. You deliberately allowed me to invade your mind. That way, you would be able to easily destroy my physical body and obtain all of my energy. Realization dawned upon Extermination. With the strength of Ling Han's divine sense, it was impossible for her to invade his mind. So this was Ling Han deliberately tricking her. Under the continuous attacks, Ling Ju could only retreat step by step. Finally, she was blasted out of the consciousness and driven out of Ling Han's body, turning into a flickering ball of light. Now, her physical body had been destroyed, and her remnant soul was like duckweed without a root. Extinction was unwilling to die. She looked at Lin Luo and the others, wanting to snatch another physical body. You think too much, Ling Han said. He punched out, and Peng, Extinction's soul was instantly shattered. Boom, a shockwave spread out, spreading throughout the entire void. A fierce person of a generation had finally fallen, completely vanishing from this world. One had to admit that Extinction was an incomparably powerful existence. Unfortunately, she insisted on standing on the opposite side of Ling Han. Lin Luo and the others all watched. Right now, Ling Han was absorbing Extinction's boundless energy. When Ling Han completed this step, he would have the ability to destroy this world. Now, the void was already dead, and it was impossible for the origin world to be reborn. They could only hope that Ling Han would open the door to a new world. Otherwise, although they wouldn't die, it would be worse than death. Boundless life, boundless loneliness, and boundless silence. After 100,000 years, Ling Han suddenly opened his eyes. A bright light flashed past like a bolt of lightning. He casually moved his arms and legs, and instantly, a terrifying power surged. It was as if the void was unable to bear it and was about to shatter. Ling Han. Lin Luo and the others all said. 100,000 years was naturally nothing to a seventh-step supreme being. There was an end to this kind of waiting. If Ling Han told them that he couldn't break through this world, under the endless despair, even Lin Luo and the others would feel that a day was like a year. In the end, they would go crazy. Ling Han nodded and looked at everyone one by one. Now, I have enough power to open that door and lead to another new world. However, I don't know what the situation is like there. Everyone, are you going or staying? Unsurprisingly, Lin Luo and the others all indicated that they would go. If they stayed, so what if they had eternal life? This kind of loneliness was unbearable. All right, then I'll open this door. Ling Han arrived at the place where the door of light had appeared. He circulated all his power and punched out. Bang! The void trembled, and a passageway was forcibly smashed open. Everyone please. Ling Han turned around and revealed a smile. At this point, the first part of Path of God has ended. All the bosses have been defeated, and the time is almost the end of June. It's about the same progress as I expected. Next, it's Ling Han's adventure in the new world. This is the content of the second part. Friends who like him can continue to chase after him. There's no need to wait, it's the next chapter. Friends who are tired of chasing after him can also rest, because this is the grand ending. Of course, I definitely hope that everyone can continue to follow him. Then, let's meet again in the next chapter. Chapter 3092. Lin Luo and the others nodded. I'll go first. Lin Luo walked out, wanting to be the vanguard. This was actually a very risky thing to do. Who knew what kind of dangers were lurking outside? Perhaps there were as many 8 steps as there were dogs, and a casual punch could kill a 7-step cultivator. What if they were to walk out so recklessly and get killed with a single slap? Without waiting for Ling Han to stop him, Lin Luo took the lead. Ling Han knew that this was Lin Luo deliberately stepping on a landmine for him. If there was really any danger, then he could be prepared. However, although Lin Luo rushed out first, after walking through the door, he found it difficult to move. After only 5 steps, he stopped. Then the door of light seemed to be extremely elastic, and with a bang, Lin Luo bounced back. To pass through this door, endless power is needed. Lin Luo smiled bitterly. He had wanted to test the risks for Ling Han, but he didn't expect that he couldn't even do this. Bai Fan, Xan Fu, and the others tried one by one, but they couldn't pass through. Opening the door required the energy of the entire void, so passing through it was probably the same. Ling Han thought for a moment, then said, "Everyone, you'd better enter the plane in my body first. Otherwise, I'm worried that after going out, this door will close, and I won't be able to open it again." Everyone nodded. Ling Han moved, taking everyone into his body. Anyway, he had already derived a super high-class plane of the million level, which was far more powerful than the Yuan world of the past. It was enough to bear these 7 steps. Now, he was the only one left in the vast void. He looked at the door of light, then looked behind him. A resolute expression appeared on his face, and he suddenly turned back and strode forward. He entered the door of light. Instantly, endless resistance attacked him, wanting to push him back. No wonder Lin Luo and the others couldn't pass through this door. Such resistance was really strong. However, for Ling Han, who had the power of the entire void, this was still not an obstacle. Ling Han strode forward, and under the vigorous vibrations of power, the force that could stop 7 steps seemed insignificant. He went deeper, and behind this door of light was a tunnel that seemed to have a life of its own, wriggling. Behind him, the void was collapsing. The space he had always lived in was about to disappear. Now, there was no turning back. He could only move forward. Ling Han walked faster and faster. He was determined. Since he had made up his mind, he would not hesitate. Forward, forward, forward. He wanted to know if there really was a big world outside of this little puddle. Hong long long, the space behind him collapsed, even affecting the passageway. The door of light suddenly shattered. Peng, peng, peng. The entire passageway also began to collapse, and it was rapidly spreading toward him. His speed was even faster than Ling Han's. Damn. Ling Han didn't know how powerful the destructive power of this collapse was. Perhaps it could even injure his physical body? Therefore, it was better not to be caught. He sped up as fast as lightning and as fast as flying. However, after running for almost an hour, Ling Han suddenly realized that there was no road ahead. There's no way out, Ling Han roared and raised his fist. He gathered all of his strength and punched forward. How powerful was his strength? Quang, the front instantly shattered no matter what it was. A wave of light assaulted him, catching him off guard. He immediately closed his eyes. Then he fell to the ground. Ha! The divine stone has appeared. The divine stone has appeared. A voice rang out beside Ling Han, filled with incomparable joy. Ling Han was stunned at first, and then a strange feeling arose in him. He clearly did not understand the other party's language, so why did he understand the meaning of this person's words? He wanted to get up, but he discovered that he was incomparably weak. He actually did not even have the strength to get up. This surprised Ling Han, and even caused him to feel a trace of fear. He had merged with the power of the entire void. How powerful was that? Yet, he could not even stand up. Ling Han did his best to open his eyes and turned his head to look. He saw an elder walking toward him. He was short and had a head full of messy hair. His face was filled with excitement and a crazy smile. At this moment, Ling Han felt that he was incomparably weak, as if he was an ordinary person or even weaker than an ordinary person. His first reaction was to release Lin Luo and the others from his body. He didn't know why he was exhausted, but Lin Luo and the others were at the 7th step and could protect him. However, he immediately found that he could not release them at all. What was going on? What was going on? The elder walked over and flipped Ling Han over. He sized him up and said, "The divine stone has shattered, and a god-child has appeared. He has descended upon my ancient Tao sect. This is a Tao child bestowed by the heavens, and it indicates that my sect will rise in the upcoming great era." What was this old man talking about? What divine stone, godchild, was he talking about him? Don't move, don't move. The old man pressed down on Ling Han with great force, making it so that Ling Han could not move at all. You have just been born and have used up all of your power. You are very weak right now. Can you understand this old man? The old man looked at Ling Han with great anticipation. Ling Han finally flipped over. He looked behind him. There were a great many stone fragments there, and one of them was extremely huge. Judging from this was originally a large stone that was close to a sphere. Now that the stone had shattered, the stone fragments at the bottom were still there. Combined with the old man's words, Ling Han had a guess in his heart. He had just broken out from this stone. Was this possible? The origin world and the endless void were all inside this stone. Ling Han was so shocked that he couldn't speak. No wonder Annihilation and Madness had always said that they lived in a small puddle. In terms of size, this was not even a small puddle. He nodded at the old man. I understand. You can understand, but this old man doesn't understand what you're saying. The old man said, this old man is really curious. More than 30 years ago, the sect master brought back the divine stone and said that according to ancient records, it would give birth to a supreme spirit embryo. It's been more than 30 years. This old man has finally waited. The old man was very excited, as if he had picked up a big treasure. Ling Han's mind was filled with disbelief. He had worked hard in the origin world and fought to become the strongest, but he had only snatched the right to be born. Where was his supreme power? Ling Han was dazed and his mind was completely blank. This was like a person who had become a millionaire through hard work, But suddenly, without any reason, he had become a penniless beggar. How could this kind of disparity be easily accepted? He didn't even realize how he had been carried away. He entered a house and was then in a daze. It seemed that many people were going in and out, saying something, but it was too far away for him to hear a word. However, after only 2 days, Ling Han pulled himself together. As long as he was still alive, he could start all over again. Moreover, there were still countless people living in those planes inside his body, and he had shouldered far, far too much. He had to pull himself together. Chapter 3093. Ling Han crawled to his feet. He discovered that he was now wearing a set of sackcloth clothes. He didn't know who had changed them for him. He slowly got down and planted his feet on the ground. He wanted to stand up, but he almost fell head first onto the ground. Damn, this kind of powerlessness made him want to die. Ling Han was gloomy. How awesome had he been in the past? He had swept through all the ferocious beasts of all ages, and could easily destroy stars and swallow the heavens. But now, he actually didn't even have the strength to stand up. This was too depressing. "Young master, you're awake." A woman's voice rang out. Ling Han turned to see that it was a green-clothed maidservant. She looked quite sweet and could barely be called a beauty. He asked, "Who are you?" "Young master, I don't understand what you're saying," said the maidservant. However, she was quite smart and quickly said, "This servant is called Huan Shui. I'm here to take care of young master's daily needs." Ling Han nodded and gestured to Huan Shui, asking her to teach him how to speak. He could understand her words, so learning to speak was actually quite simple. In just half a day, Ling Han had more or less grasped this world's language. The door opened, and sunlight poured in. A tall man appeared in the doorway. But because the sunlight was too blinding, it was impossible to see his face. He could only tell that he was a very tall man. "Greetings, young Master Li." Huan Shui hurriedly bowed. Only then did the man walk in. His appearance could be seen clearly. He was a young man in his early 20s. He was very handsome, and his every movement seemed to contain a powerful sense of power. "I'm Li Zhangdan." The young man smiled, seeming very cultured and refined. "After resting for 2 days, you can finally get up. That's great news." He seemed to be very concerned about Ling Han, but Ling Han had been through a lot. He could clearly see the contempt and enmity hidden deep within the young man's eyes. "What a hypocrite," Ling Han said in his heart. He deliberately pretended not to understand and spouted nonsense. In any case, the other party would not understand. Li Zhangdan sat for a while and then left. Her face was full of smiles, as if she didn't mind at all. "Where did this guy come from?" Ling Han asked Huan Shui. Huan Shui immediately revealed a look of worship. "Young Master Li is the most outstanding disciple of our ancient Tao sect. You don't know, but young Master Li is only 21 years old, but he has already opened 9 meridians. His strength is shocking." Clear the meridians. Ling Han had the urge to laugh out loud. This sounded like the initial stage of martial art. How could it be called amazing strength? However, he immediately sighed. He could barely even stand now. In comparison, he could only be considered a baby. Well, he had just been born from the God's stone. If he wasn't a baby, what else could he be? But judging from his size, he was a supergiant baby. What is this place? Ling Han was curious. What kind of world had he entered? Call Snow was only a maidservant, so she didn't know much either. She told Ling Han everything in full detail. This was the ancient Tao sect, a place for cultivating martial art. The sect master was called Sun Jianfang, and it was said that he was more than 100 years old. He was one of the first people to stand out after the world changed, and he was now an expert that looked down on the world. In this great era, everyone desired to cultivate and obtain strength. However, the path of cultivation was too difficult. For example, Huan Shui didn't have any talent in martial art, so she could only be a maid and rely on the protection of the ancient Tao sect. Because after the world changed, the wild beasts that could only be prey suddenly evolved and took over a large amount of human territory. This caused the spirit of all creatures to become prey. A few people were lucky enough to enter the territory of a powerful expert. The even luckier ones were accepted by a powerful expert as a disciple and walked the path of martial art. The unlucky ones, like Huan Xue, could only become slaves. However, Huan Xue only knew this much. She had been in the ancient Tao sect since she was born, and she had never left the mountain until she was 19 years old. As such, her knowledge was limited. He had to ask someone else. Fortunately, just one day later, Ling Han was summoned by the Mongolian Tao sect's sect master. Young master, when you meet Lord Sect Master, you have to be humble. Huan Xue tried to persuade Ling Han. Lord Sect Master can control everyone's life and death. If you accidentally anger Lord Sect Master, he won't even need to kill you. He'll just throw you off the mountain and you'll be eaten by wild beasts. Ling Han smiled. Although this maid's knowledge was low, she had a good heart. I understand. After these few days, his strength had been increasing, and walking was no longer a problem. He soon arrived at the courtyard where Sun Jianfang was. After knocking on the door, he was led in by a Dao boy. The courtyard was very big, and there was a white-haired old man drinking tea in the garden. When he heard Ling Han enter, he turned around and looked at Ling Han. This was an old man around 70 years old. He put down the teacup and revealed a smile. Come here. Sun Jianfang. According to Huan Xue, this old man was already more than 100 years old. It seemed that he had taken good care of himself. Ling Han obeyed and walked over. His current strength, N, was close to 0, and although this person in front of him was very old, it was as if there was a ferocious tiger hidden within his body. Not to mention fighting one of him, even fighting 10 of him would not be a problem. Therefore, it was better to go along with this old man for now. Ling Han walked over and said, I have many questions. Sun Jianfang raised his white eyebrows. Not bad. In just 4 days, you have already learned our language. As expected of a natural-born divine child. Ling Han said, I don't understand. More than 30 years ago, I entered a historical site in search of opportunities. However, it was too dangerous. I went through many twists and turns and almost died, but all I obtained was a stone and a notebook. This was the notebook of an ancient powerhouse who was extremely powerful. He said that he obtained this stone during his adventure and that its origin might be incomparably great. So, he called it the God Stone. He believed that it contained some kind of power between heaven and earth. One day, it would give birth to a living being that was unprecedentedly powerful. 3 years ago, the God Stone went berserk. I thought that the divine child was about to be born. I didn't expect that the time was not right. In just a short while, the God's Stone stopped. Fortunately, after waiting for another 3 years, you still came. Sun Jianfang stopped and took a sip of tea. Ling Han was shocked. 3 years ago, the God's Stone went berserk. According to the theory of extinction, the first origin world was destroyed 3,000 years ago. Theoretically, only the collapse of the origin world would cause the God's Stone to go berserk. Otherwise, with the vastness of the void and the swirling energy storm, how could the God's Stone be alarmed? But 3 years ago. Chapter 3095. Ancient Tao Sect, Li Zhangdan's Courtyard. Senior Brother Li, something bad has happened. I heard that the sect leader intends to make Ling Han a Taoist. A young man rushed in, his face full of anger. Li Zhangdan was practicing his fist technique, but he didn't change at all when he heard that. He continued to practice and said indifferently, Don't panic. The sky hasn't collapsed yet. How come it hasn't collapsed yet? Asked the young man anxiously. Elder Brother Li, you should be the Tao child of our sect. You should continue the legacy of the sect leader. You should travel the world on behalf of the sect leader. Who does that Ling Han think he is? He doesn't have a father or a mother. He popped out of a rock. I don't even know if he's a human or a demon. How can we let such a person be our Tao child? Senior Brother Li, you started practicing fist techniques at the age of 11. You're 21 years old now, and you've already opened 9 meridians in your body. Even senior brothers who are much older than you usually only have 6 meridians opened. As long as you open another meridian, you can become an elder of the sect. That Ling Han can't even compare to you. If he wants to be a Dao child, I'll be the first to object. The young man said angrily, as if Ling Han had snatched his position as the Dao child. Li Zhongdan was still calm as he punched out. After opening 9 meridians, no matter where he was in the ancient Dao sect, he was qualified to be called an expert. Tong Feng, that's just a rumor, he said coolly. Besides, even the esteemed sect leader can't just ignore everyone's objections and rashly appoint someone as Dao child. The young man's surname was Zheng and his name was Zheng Tongfeng. He was 1 year younger than elder brother Li and had opened 4 meridians. His aptitude could only be considered average. He looked at Li Zhongdan and was influenced by her, gradually calming down. But senior apprentice brother Li, everyone is spreading the word now. If we let them do as they please, who knows, they might really get what they want in the future. He was still worried. Li Zhongdan laughed. Don't worry, there's plenty of time. If you want to be a Dao child, you'll naturally have to pass the test. You can't be someone with a corrupt character. Senior apprentice brother Li means. Zheng Tongfeng suddenly understood and didn't say anything more. If one wanted to be a Daoist, not only did one have to have talent in martial art, but they also had to have a good moral character. However, if Ling Han committed a crime, would he still be qualified to be a Daoist? Hee. Li Zhongdan continued punching. He had to clear the 10th Dao as soon as possible. Only then could he truly establish himself in this great world. Otherwise, he would only be considered a minor character. As for Ling Han, Ling Han first flipped through the fist manual. Although his current strength had fallen to rock bottom, his comprehension had not changed at all. He only needed to flip through the fist manual once to understand it. It's a pity that I can't apply the martial arts I've mastered before. Otherwise, I wouldn't need to practice such shallow martial arts, Ling Han murmured. Although this was a very shallow fist technique, it conformed to a certain rule of this world. Practicing it could strengthen one's body and give one the power to break stones and pillars. Ling Han practiced in the courtyard. After this practice, he immediately realized that he was biting off more than he could chew. Understanding was one thing, but being able to do it was another. This fist technique was very tricky. It had to twist the body, many of which violated the structure of the human body. Forcefully twisting was not only painful, but also impossible to reach at certain angles. If it was in the past, it would be a piece of cake for Ling Han. His body could twist at will, but now he was just an ordinary person. If he forcefully twisted, the result would be that he broke his own bones. I have to train my body's toughness first. Otherwise, I can't practice this fist technique. Ling Han said to himself. He began to train his toughness. Pressing his legs and bending his waist, he began the basic training. When it came to practicing martial arts, Ling Han had always been crazy. In order to get started as soon as possible, he tortured himself as if his life depended on it. If others pressed their legs, they would at most be able to do a split, but he almost broke both his legs to the side of his ears. If he wanted to do it, he had to do it to the best of his ability. Fortunately, toughness was easy to train. After just 2 days, Ling Han began practicing fist techniques again. After going through it once, Ling Han frowned. There were too many areas where it wasn't perfect. He corrected his mistakes over and over again until he was exhausted. After a night's rest, Ling Han continued. In terms of foundation, he was a person who pursued perfection, almost to the point of being abnormal. He even asked Huan Xue to get a mirror and asked her to step back. He stripped himself down to his underpants and punched in front of the mirror, picking out his subtle shortcomings. Under such abnormal requirements, he completely mastered this fist technique after another day. It was as if he had been practicing for more than 10 years. There was not the slightest bit of sluggishness. The sun had already set, but Ling Han did not stop. Since he had already mastered the fist technique, he had to open the first meridian in one go and restart his path of martial art. However, he did not feel anything after punching dozens of times. If he could not feel the existence of the meridian, how could he open it? Is it not suitable for me to practice martial arts here? Ling Han stopped, looking puzzled. He did not know where the divine stone came from, but he knew what was inside. He walked out, but the premise was that he had absorbed all the energy there. How could the divine stone be ordinary? Therefore, he had to be a genius. I need the Meridian Guide fruit to start the path of martial art. Ling Han frowned. It's too late now. I'll take a good rest and come again tomorrow. The next morning, before the sun rose, Ling Han started practicing. But just like the night before, he still could not feel any meridian. I don't believe it. Ling Han kept practicing. He was a stubborn person. He was once in existence above the seventh step. His will was as strong as iron. How could he give up so easily? A golden light appeared on the horizon. The sun was about to rise. Ling Han was suddenly startled. He found that he had absorbed a weak energy that was slowly swimming in his body. This energy rose from the bottom of his left foot and spread to his left abdomen, then up his left chest, over his neck, and stopped below his left eye. I can feel it. He stopped, and the energy immediately disappeared. However, Ling Han had a feeling that his body seemed to be a little stronger. It was very weak, but Ling Han's divine sense was very sharp. He could determine that it was not his illusion. This was unbelievable. Not only did he find the meridian, but he also guided the energy to flow in it. According to Sun Jianfeng, the human body had a total of 12 meridians, known as the 12 principal meridians. But since there were already diagrams, why did so many people still fail to open the path of cultivation? That was because the meridians were not blood vessels or bones. Even if a person was cut open, they would not be able to see or touch it. The diagrams only showed that the meridians were nearby. One still needed to feel and explore it himself. Chapter 3096. Let's not worry about that for now. Since I can feel the meridians, let's talk about it later. Ling Han was very ambitious. He let go of the doubts in his heart and concentrated on punching. There was even more power surging into his body, circulating in his meridians. This meridian was very sluggish, as if there were many impurities. However, every time a force surged through it, it was as if a plow had been used to clear it up. Ling Han discovered that his meridians were actually so small and full of impurities. As he smoothed them over and over again, a lot of impurities were brought out, and his meridians gradually widened. Suddenly, he found that there was no longer any power surging into his body. No matter how he punched, he could not enter this state. What's the reason? They're so dirty. He discovered that there was a layer of black stuff on his hand, and it even smelled fishy. When he looked again, it wasn't just his hands. His arms, thighs, and entire body were covered in the same pattern. Could it be that these are the impurities that are removed from the meridians? Ling Han suddenly realized something. That must be it. He quickly went to take a shower. This world was very strange. Water did not need to be fetched. It was connected to the house through iron pipes. As long as a switch was turned, the water would flow out. You could even choose whether it was hot or cold water. Ling Han took a shower and rinsed off all the dirt on his body. Growl. His stomach growled. So hungry. Ling Han was surprised. Ever since he had achieved success in his cultivation, he had lost his sense of hunger. But now, not only was he hungry, he was so hungry that he felt like he could swallow an entire cow. He called Summoning Snow over and asked her to prepare some food. After eating, Ling Han continued to practice. But to his disappointment, that strand of power no longer surged into his body. From morning to noon, and then to night, Ling Han did not stop. He practiced for another night and only stopped when he was really tired. If it had been yesterday, he definitely wouldn't have been able to hold on for so long. However, after absorbing the strands of energy in the morning, his physique seemed to have become much stronger, allowing him to hold on. Of course, it wouldn't take too long. A day and a night shouldn't be a problem. The night passed, and the sun rose again from the east. When the red sun appeared, that energy came again. Threads of coolness flowed into Ling Han's body, giving him an indescribable sense of comfort. Could it be because of the sun? Ling Han wondered. When the sun rose, there might be some sort of special resonance, but when the sun rose, that resonance would disappear. Sure enough, after a while, the energy stopped surging. Ling Han stopped. There was no point in continuing. He would only feel tired, and it would be a complete waste of time. According to the meridian map, the meridian I'm opening now is the foot Yangming stomach meridian. If I were to practice fist techniques, it would only be effective in the early morning. This means that I can no longer sleep in. Shower. Although he could only cultivate for a short while, filth appeared on Ling Han's body again. It was simply unbearable. This world is a bit like the mechanical world of the Yuan world. It's mainly based on technology. However, there was a turning point in history more than 100 years ago. Martial art rose without restraint, and technology was ruthlessly crushed by martial art. However, even though technology doesn't have an advantage in fighting, in daily life, technology really brings a lot of convenience. Ling Han looked at the clock hanging on the wall. It was said that this was a common thing before the world changed. But now that a large number of factories had turned into ruins, these things were less and less. The night passed. Ling Han woke up early and practiced fist techniques in the yard. The whole process only took about half an hour. Any longer and there would be no effect. All he could do was improve his usage of fist techniques. When he had just finished breakfast, he was summoned by Sun Jianfang. "Greetings, sect leader." Ling Han bowed. No matter how high he stood before, he was now an ordinary person. He had just opened a meridian in his body, and could barely be considered to be on the path of cultivation. Sun Jianfang nodded and asked, "Have you studied the fist technique manual I gave you a few days ago?" "Yes," Ling Han answered honestly. "If there's anything you don't understand, feel free to ask." Sun Jianfang said. He paused and smiled. "I gave you these few days so that you can ask all the questions you have accumulated, so that you don't have to waste time going back and forth." Ling Han shook his head. "There's nothing I don't understand. I've learned everything." Sun Jianfang was about to drink his tea, but when he heard that, he couldn't help but show a hint of displeasure. He put down the teacup and said, "If you know, then you know. If you don't know, then you don't know. I hate people who pretend to know when they don't." Ling Han's mouth twitched. There really wasn't anything he didn't understand. Did he want him to pretend to be stupid? "Indeed, there's nothing I don't understand," he said. Sun Jianfang almost kicked him, but after thinking about it, he forcefully suppressed it and said, "Okay, since you're so confident, then show me." Ling Han nodded and immediately got into a stance and practiced. Every move and every style was perfect. Sun Jianfang was dumbfounded as if he had seen a ghost. He had already overestimated Ling Han enough, which was why he summoned Ling Han today to give him some pointers. In his opinion, it had only been a few days, and Ling Han had at most practiced 1/3 of the fist style, so he would definitely have too many questions. This was already a very, very high estimation of Ling Han. After all, he was a son of God, and couldn't be measured by normal people's standards. But now, not only did Ling Han learn the entire fist style, but he also didn't make a single mistake. It was so perfect that even Sun Jianfang couldn't help but want to praise it. Damn, this is too exaggerated. Is a divine child so awesome? Genius? No, super genius. He wanted to praise Ling Han excitedly. With such an heir, the ancient Tao sect would definitely be able to take the lead in the future glorious era and stand proudly. But after thinking about it again, he shook his head in his heart. No, this brat is already proud enough. If I praise him again, won't I be flying into the sky? Sun Jianfang slowly nodded and said, "In the end, you didn't disappoint this old man. This is a bit more like it." After he finished speaking, his face was burning hot. He was lying against his conscience. Would he be struck by lightning 5 times by the heavens? Ling Han withdrew his hand and only smiled. He didn't point it out. He had to leave some face for Sun Jianfang. After all, Sun Jianfang was an elder and a powerful cultivator, and according to the time here, he wasn't even half a year old. Give way. Since you don't have any problems with the fist style, then this old man will talk to you about the meridians. Sun Jianfang said. He sighed in his heart. According to his plan, this should only be discussed a month later. The path of cultivation is long, and we have just come into contact with this field, so our knowledge is extremely limited. Chapter 3097. The path to immortality is long and arduous, Sun Jianfang said. Ling Han didn't say anything and just listened. The first step to immortality is to communicate with heaven and earth through techniques and extract the power of heaven and earth. Sun Jianfang finally said something useful and confirmed Ling Han's guess that he could only cultivate for half an hour in the morning. The human body has 12 main meridians. Once they are opened, the body will be filled with power and an ordinary person will have the ability to shatter rocks and pillars. In the ancient books, there are powerful people who can overturn rivers and seas. They are unparalleled. However, the first step is not to open the meridians, but to sense them first. Sun Jianfang paused and looked at Ling Han. Although the meridians of the human body are illustrated, they only tell you where they are. How to sense them is still up to you. Here, this is the meridian attraction fruit. He threw a red fruit to Ling Han, and a faint fragrance wafted out. After the Great Change, there were many earthquakes, and many ancient buildings appeared. There were even mountains that rose from the ground. Not only were there teachings and inheritances, but there were also this kind of fruit. If you eat it, it will greatly increase the probability of you sensing the meridians. Ling Han took the meridian attraction fruit with a strange expression. Should he tell him that he had already sensed the meridians and had made some progress? Don't underestimate this fruit. Our sect only has one meridian attraction fruit tree, and it can only bear 10 fruits every year. But there are too many people who need it. Sun Jianfang said seriously, if this fruit is sold outside, it will be worth at least 100 jade seeds. Jade seeds? Ling Han heard a new term and was very curious. Jade seeds are the essence of jade. They contain a certain kind of energy between heaven and earth. If they are stimulated by a spirit-gathering array, they can release the energy inside. They can be used to cultivate and strengthen themselves at any time, Sun Jianfang said. Ling Han nodded. This was equivalent to spirit stones. However, one could directly hold a spirit stone and cultivate, but this could only be done through an array. He nodded and kept the meridian drawing fruit. He didn't need it, but he could sell it. Moreover, he still wanted to restart the path of alchemy. If he could refine the meridian drawing fruit into the meridian drawing pill, wouldn't he be rich? Go! Sun Jianfang waved his hand. I'll give you 10 days. This old man will check if you can sense your meridians. Ling Han bowed respectfully, and then left. Sun Jianfang stroked his beard and was a bit hesitant. Should he increase the time limit of 10 days? In the ancient Tao sect, the fastest time to sense a meridian was 29 days. 10 days. Seeing that Ling Han had mastered the square fist so quickly, he changed the deadline at the last minute. Forget it, 10 days it is. If this brat doesn't succeed at that time, I can suppress his arrogance. This will only be beneficial to Ling Han. Ling Han returned to his room and decided to learn more about alchemy. He asked Huan Shui where he could find alchemy books. Books. Huan Shui scratched her head and revealed a difficult expression. After the Great Change, the world was greatly damaged. Places like the library were the first to turn into ruins because they weren't heavily protected. Ling Han sighed. Was his luck really that bad? Huan Shui suddenly said, however, if young master just wants to look up information, you can use the optical computer. What optical computer? Ling Han was confused. Young master, have you never used the optical computer in your study? Huan Shui was even more confused. Ling Han shrugged his shoulders. He didn't even know what an optical computer was. It's all my fault. Huan Shui blamed herself. I forgot that young master was born from a rock. How could he know about our world? She took it for granted. Optical computers were something that everyone in the world knew about. Perhaps even 3-year-olds knew how to play with them. Therefore, she naturally thought that Ling Han should know about them as well. Come, young master, I'll teach you. The two arrived at the bookstore. Huan Shui began to teach Ling Han how to use the optical computer. It was a small box-like thing with a button on it. Once it was pressed, A ray of light shot out and transformed into the form of a young girl. Yes, image projection. Ling Han habitually used his existing knowledge to explain. This move was often used by Wally. His eyes glowed and he could transform into any scene. I'm your little assistant. May I ask what you need me to do? The girl asked. Young master, you can ask her if you have any questions. Huan Shui said. This was something that even a 3-year-old could do. Ling Han nodded and said, How many pill recipes do you know? 109, the girl replied. Show me. Understood. The girl disappeared with a bang. Then, countless dots of light condensed and transformed into words and pictures. Purple origin pill can be used to treat injuries. The required materials are purple heart fruit, origin intent grass, and 100-year-old tortoise shell. The concoction requirements are the heavenly integration formation, Zisher. As Ling Han read on, he could not help but look surprised. Refining pills also required time and formations. This was really different. Ling Han said directly, Show me the pill recipe for the meridian drawing pill. Made a sound. The words and pictures just now immediately shattered. Then, the light and shadow reorganized, forming new words and pictures. Meridian drawing pill can help sense the meridians. Required materials are meridian drawing fruit. Only meridian drawing fruit? Refining requirements. 3 elemental formation, no time limit. Ling Han said again, Show me the specific information about 3 elemental formation. I showed him the formation again. This was a 3D image. Every detail could be zoomed in. It was really useful. It was equivalent to bringing along Wally. Ling Han couldn't help but miss this guy. With this world's information and Wally's analysis and deduction abilities, the two of them would definitely have a good time working together. Forget it, he couldn't let Wally out now. He had to rely on himself. Ling Han began to study 3 elemental formation. Actually, it wasn't difficult to set up this formation. However, he needed to find a suitable terrain. The formation actually used the terrain to draw out the energy hidden in the earth and turn it into the flame for refining pills. However, there were 2 conditions to set up the formation. First, the formation base. Second, the jade seed. The formation base was the foundation of the formation. It was the key to drawing out the terrain, while the jade seed provided the initial energy. The difficulty now lies in the first, the formation base. Second, the jade seed. I'm penniless now. Other than a meridian drawing fruit, I don't have any assets. How am I supposed to get the formation base and the jade seed? The formation base was fine. Even normal stones could be used as the base. It was just that it wasn't durable. Perhaps it would be destroyed in the middle of refining pills. However, the jade seed was real money. Where can I get money? Chapter 3099. It's too chaotic here. I'll take you to a quieter place. Zheng Tongfeng smiled. He brought Ling Han to the elevator and brought them to the basement. The elevator was filled with electricity again. Ling Han nodded. No wonder the rise of the demonic beasts had caused such a huge upheaval for mankind. Humans relied too much on electricity. Once the power plant was destroyed, the operation of the city would be completely paralyzed. The basement was really quiet. There were many private rooms here, and at the door of each room stood a beautiful woman with a superior temperament. She did not wear heavy makeup, and her clothes were not revealing at all. However, the tight-fitting dresses completely outlined their curves, which made people's blood boil. Welcome, young masters. A beautiful woman immediately came up and bowed to the two. From her neck down, one could see a snow-white bulge through her collar. It was just a flash, which made people feel a sense of regret. Zheng Tongfeng could not help but swallow his saliva. He did not just look young. He was indeed only 20 years old, which was the age of youth and vigor. A little teasing could make him lose his composure. Invite your lady boss over, he said, staring at the chest of the beautiful woman. Yes, young master. The beautiful woman bowed again, then turned around and left. Her small but was tightly wrapped in cloth. With a twist, it was extremely charming. Although she was new, she knew that those who could enter this place were definitely big customers of the casino. Therefore, she did not dare to slight them. Soon, a woman with a hot figure walked over. "Oh, if it isn't young Master Zheng. Forgive me for not coming out to greet you." This woman twisted her voluptuous body. Her slender waist and plump but formed a sharp contrast. Coupled with her long legs, it really made people's noses bleed. In particular, her skirt had a high slit. Once she walked, a snow-white thigh was revealed. One could see the beautiful curves, and it was dazzlingly white. Zheng Tongfeng's eyes suddenly lit up. He greedily glanced at this woman's body. After a while, he said, "Sister Yang, you really flatter me. I'm just a small character. How can I afford to receive you?" "This is..." Sister Yang turned to look at Ling Han, biting her red lips. Her eyes were watery, and she looked at Ling Han coquettishly. Ling Han smiled faintly. Ling Han. He'd seen too many beauties in the origin world, and there was no lack of peerlessly beautiful and seductive beauties amongst them. But had his heart ever been moved? Sister Yang couldn't help but be surprised. She had too much confidence in her appearance and figure. Any gentleman of virtue would be tempted to look at her. At the very least, they would blush and their hearts would race. They wanted to look but didn't dare to. But the young man in front of her was too calm. In his eyes, she was like a mass of air. However, of course, she would not show it. She smiled and said, "It's young Master Ling's first time here. I will definitely treat you well." She invited Ling Han and Zheng Tongfeng into a private room, and a beautiful woman immediately brought wine and fruits. "Sister Yang, I want to talk to you." Zheng Tongfeng waved at Sister Yang. "Oh, what's the matter? You have to be so secretive." Sister Yang smiled as she swayed her butt and walked out of the private room with Zheng Tongfeng. "Sister Yang, junior brother Ling is the future Taoist of our ancient Tao sect. The sect master dotes on him very much and even gave him a meridian drawing fruit. You have to know that he's only been in our sect for less than 10 days, Zheng Tongfeng said. Sister Yang's beautiful eyes lit up. She opened her mouth slightly, revealing a row of snow-white teeth. She was very charming. Zheng Tongfeng felt a fire burning in his chest. He wanted to pounce on this beautiful woman, but he could only think about it in his heart. This beauty was not only a 6 meridian master, but it was said that the person behind her was a king of 11 meridian masters. Not to mention him, even Li Zhongdan couldn't afford to offend him. Otherwise, with such a beautiful woman and such a profitable business, how could Sister Yang be so safe and smooth all the time? "So, Sister Yang, you might as well make a lot of money from him," Zheng Tongfeng said with a smile. Sister Yang also giggled. "You're really bad. You're even screwing over your own family." "Isn't it because I like Sister Yang?" Zheng Tongfeng said as he reached out, wanting to take advantage of her. However, Sister Yang twisted her body and dodged. She giggled and said, "Okay, I'll remember this favor. I'll give you 10%, okay?" Zheng Tongfeng nodded. If Sister Yang was willing to sleep with him for a night, he definitely wouldn't want anything. However, even if Sister Yang asked, he didn't have the guts to do it. He really didn't want his life. A beautiful dealer came into the room. She smiled sweetly at Ling Han. "Young Master Ling, what do you want to play?" Ling Han smiled faintly. "I don't have a single cent, so I can't play anything." "It's fine." Sister Yang said that young Master Ling's identity is special, so his reputation can be completely trusted. She gave young Master Ling 100,000 ancient Tao coins and 100 jade seeds, the beauty said. Ancient Tao coins were the currency issued by the ancient Tao sect and were used by normal people. However, jade seeds were used globally, so everyone knew the value of this thing. "Here, these are your chips. The silver ones can only be exchanged for ancient Tao coins, while the gold ones can be exchanged for jade seeds." The beauty pushed the 2 colored chips to Ling Han. Ling Han thought about it and said, "Then let's play dice. Let's see who's bigger." He had a guess in his heart and wanted to confirm it. The beautiful dealer took out the dice and put it on the table. "Young Master Ling, how much do you want to bet?" 1,000 ancient Tao coins. Ling Han looked around and threw out a silver coin. This was also the smallest denomination. The beauty nodded. Young Masterling, after you. According to the rules of the casino, the one with the biggest number wins. If the numbers are the same, then the dealer wins. Ling Han grabbed the dice and threw it casually. It was actually a 1 and a 2, which was almost the smallest. The beauty revealed a smile. As long as she didn't throw 2 ones, she would win. Putting aside the fact that she had been trained for a long time, even if she was a completely normal person, she would still have a 90% chance of winning. She picked up the dice and threw them. The 2 dice spun around in the air. The dice became slower and slower and were about to stop. These 2 dice rotated at different speeds. Hence, one of them stopped first. Just as it was about to stop on a 6, for some reason, it moved slightly again and became a 1. The beauty was stunned. Her hand actually trembled? It was fine, it was fine. As long as the second dice was not also a 1, it would be fine. However, things did not go as she wished. When the second dice stopped, it was clearly a 3, but for some reason, it moved again and became a 1. This, 2 ones, so of course it lost to a 3. Young Masterling is really lucky. You won on the first try, the beauty said reluctantly. Her heart was filled with confusion. Ling Han smiled. He guessed correctly. The luck attribute was working. End of chapter. Chapter 3100. In the Yuan world, people with orbs of light in their consciousness all had something special about them. For example, Ling Han's natural talent in alchemy was superb, Ning Haixin had an extremely strong affinity, and Wang Chuanhe was extremely lucky. And all of this, after Ling Han had obtained the power of the entire origin world and the entire void, these attributes had all been obtained by him. The Yuan world and the void were all contained in the God Stone. Since it was called the God Stone, it shouldn't just be used to nurture Ling Han, right? Therefore, Ling Han guessed that all of his abilities should be useful. Of course, he couldn't guarantee it, so he had to give it a try. 2,000. He pushed out another chip. In the end, he threw out a 5, while the beauty only had 3. The gambling continued. No matter how good or bad Ling Han's luck was, he always won 1 or 2 points more than his opponent. With great difficulty, the beauty finally threw out 2 6s. The banker won, but Ling Han suddenly lowered the stakes, causing her to feel even more depressed than if she had lost. After completely proving that he possessed the luck attribute, Ling Han began to place his golden chips. Soon, the beauty lost so much that her hands were trembling. Jade seed. That was a priceless item. A single jade seed could buy her entire person. But now, she had lost as many as 100 jade seeds. How could she not break out in a cold sweat? Meng, take a rest first. I'll go. Sister Yang appeared. She had a smile on her pretty face, but her eyes were murderous. Wow, this Zheng Tongfeng actually dared to trick her. How was he a young chick? He was simply a tiger in disguise. His gambling skills were too good. Ling Han had only lost small amounts of money, but had won large bets. If one were to say that he was not an expert gambler, who would believe that? Zheng Tongfeng also came in. He looked at the small mountain of chips in front of Ling Han in shock. 10,000 thoughts ran through his mind. Damn, what was going on? The staff of the casino were all professionals. How could they lose to a youngster? Ling Han nodded and smiled. Sure. In fact, he did not have any gambling skills. It was all based on luck. The key was that his luck was so good that he could ignore anyone. It did not matter who it was. How about we change the way we bet? Sister Yang suggested with a smile. Sure. Ling Han didn't mind. They switched to playing Pai Gao. After a brief introduction of the rules, the game began. After a short while, cold sweat broke out on Big Sister Yang's fair forehead. At first glance, they had bet 10 rounds, and both sides had a 50-50 chance of winning or losing. However, Ling Han only lost a small amount of money, and every round he won was a huge profit. Thus, even though the number of rounds he won and lost was the same, he still won a few hundred jade seeds. Sister Yang could not hold on any longer. She knew that she had encountered a true expert. Absolutely, she didn't even know how she lost. She could only attribute it to luck. Luck is illusory, can it be taken seriously? Therefore, it could only be said that Ling Han's gambling skills were too good. He couldn't even tell. I'm a little tired, she said. Young Master Ling is really good at gambling. Why don't we call it a day? It's almost dawn. I also need a good rest. Women, staying up late is too harmful. Ling Han did not go too far. If he continued to gamble, the entire casino might have to pay him back. Then, whether he could walk out of here alive would be a problem. After all, he was too weak now. He nodded, put away his chips and left. When he passed by Zheng Tongfeng, he smiled and said, "Thank you, senior brother Zheng." Then he left. As expected, Sister Yang looked at Zheng Tongfeng. Her gaze was sharp and full of killing intent. How much did the casino lose this night? Nearly 700 jade seeds. This was a shocking amount of wealth. And all of this was caused by Zheng Tongfeng. He even said that Ling Han was a fat sheep who came to give away money. Give away money, your sister? Zheng Tongfeng, this matter will not be let off so easily. Zheng Tongfeng was about to cry. How could he have thought that a person who came from a rock not only knew how to gamble, but also had such profound gambling skills? He was not afraid of Sister Yang. Although he was a bit weaker, he was still a disciple of the ancient Dao sect, so she wouldn't dare to use force. However, the problem was that the real boss of this casino was Gu Tang. Who was Gu Tang? He was the third elder of the ancient Dao sect. If he offended Gu Tang, he wouldn't even know how he died. He didn't know how he walked out. He sat down on the street and was covered in cold sweat. It had been his idea to go back and ask Li Zhongdan for help. Now that something had happened, he couldn't just ignore it. Right? He had to quickly go back and ask Li Zhongdan to mediate. When Zheng Tongfeng hurriedly went to find Li Zhongdan to mediate, Ling Han had already exchanged his chips and returned to the ancient Dao sect. This was the first time he had seen jade seeds. They were only the size of soybeans and looked like pieces of fine jade. Of course, a single jade seed was very small, but 700 of them added together was still quite a heavy amount. Ling Han asked the casino for a cloth bag, and it took him a bit of effort to carry it back. His strength was simply too weak. Ling Han only rested for a bit before the sun came out. He quickly went to practice his fist technique, and his first meridian had been opened up a lot. According to Sun Jianfang, he had also opened his meridian, but there was also the difference in width. If one person's meridian was 1 and the other was 100, then how big of a difference would there be between them when they were both filled with power? This was the foundation. Ling Han naturally had to open his first meridian to the limit before opening his second meridian. Otherwise, being greedy would only make him regret it in the future. Half an hour later, Ling Han stopped. The time for cultivation was over, so there was no point in continuing. This time, some impurities were expelled from his body, but compared to a few days ago, there was much less. This meant that his constitution had improved a lot, so it would not be as violent as before. I really have to thank Zheng Tongfeng. When I was in need of money, he sent it to me. Ling Han broke into a smile. When his strength had increased, he would definitely properly thank the other party. Now, I can build the ternary formation and refine the meridian drawing pill. Since the biggest problem of money had been solved, Ling Han decided to make a better formation foundation. He did not want to refine the meridian drawing pill as a one-time deal. The best material for the formation foundation was the earth yuan iron. This was currently the toughest material known. It was extremely tough and resistant to fire and cold. This material was very expensive. In the past, it was used on warships, but now it was used to make cold weapons. In the hands of martial artists, it could unleash terrifying power. Ling Han went to the town to buy it. The ternary formation was very simple. It only needed 3 formation foundations, so he did not need much earth yuan iron. He bought this material from a weapon shop. It was only the size of a fist, and it cost him 30 jade seeds. It was very expensive. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.